Hi, good afternoon, everyone. It's just on 5 o'clock, and welcome to this month's Performance Scrutiny Committee and Partnerships. I've got the usual legal alert to read out first. So, this Scrutiny Committee meeting is being conducted on a hybrid basis in accordance with Local Government and Election Wales Act 2021, which will operate alongside the Council Standing Orders. The Council Standing Orders and Code of Conduct will apply at all times, and members should conduct themselves accordingly. Please do note attending online, switch off your cameras and mute your microphones when you're not speaking to ensure that there's no unnecessary background noise. Can I also remind members to ensure their chat function is switched on and to use that facility to indicate when they wish to speak on a particular item. Please do not speak until I invite you to do so, and remember to unmute your microphone and switch your camera on. A recorded version of this meeting will be uploaded for public viewing as soon as possible after the meeting. Welsh translation of the proceedings can be provided upon request, and the images and sound recording may also be used for training purposes within the council. So the first item on the agenda is apologies. I believe we've had apologies from Councillor Green. That's right, okay, no other apologies. No others? Okay, thanks. And declarations of interest first, then, please. Councillor Marshall?
Yeah, on agenda point 3, I reside within one of the areas and been active with one of the areas involved.
Okay, thanks very much. We've looked at that. Any other declarations of interest? Councillor Davis?
Yeah, I'm on the board of Waysavers.
Thank you very much. Right, we'll move on to item 3 on the agenda then, the Public Spaces Protection Order, the PSPOs. The first one is the renewal for the city centre. The renewal for the city centre, that's the first one. And then we'll move on to the maze last. So I'll just hand over to Sylvia.
So, well, the item, I mean, we can do one by one if you want, but I'll present the whole item together. So essentially, the city centre and Peel public space protection orders are coming to the end, so we're looking at renewal. The mass class one was recently renewed, but as part of the consultation for renewal, there was interest in extending the area. So we're looking at the extension of the area that the current existing PSPO covers. And as part of that process, we've reviewed the actual prohibitions included as part of the different PSPOs. And we are proposing that they are rewarded so that the provision, the powers that are given under the PSPOs are easier for the different officers to enforce and act on. So essentially, we are at the moment about to conclude the public consultation that has to be undertaken linked to these extensions or renewals. And just part of that process, we wanted to get your feedback on the proposals, really. So I don't want to extend on that any further. You've had the report, but I'd like to pass it on to Paul Davis, who's our community safety manager, to give me more detail behind the changes.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. I'm Paul Davis. Just to give you some context, I retired from policing in December after serving over 30 years. The reason I mention that is that I'm most of my service is in Newport, so I've got a fairly detailed appreciation and understanding of the challenges and sort of what I'd sort of deem to be fairly sort of effective in managing issues from a community context. So from my perspective, obviously, when I started, I reviewed and looked at the current PSPOs in relation to the city centre, Hill and Maze Glass. And prior to actually making any amendments, I looked at the PSPOs from a national perspective in other boroughs, cities and towns, just to see the sorts of prohibitions they had to ensure that the prohibitions that we had were effective, because it's critical that they actually add value to the communities within Newport. What I found from a national perspective is that they were all enforceable, whereas when I reviewed our PSPOs, the 3 PSPOs, they were very much what I would call conditional. So on the proviso you do something, then it won't be enforced. And if I use the example of alcohol, if an officer from the council or police officer speaks to an individual and asks them to empty the vessel that they've got with alcohol in, 5 minutes later they go to a store, buy another one, and that then perpetual cycle happens. Whereas what I wanted to happen is that there are obviously implications for certain behaviours, and it's important that obviously that message is passed so to other individuals in the community. PSPOs and community work is not just about enforcement, it's about education and awareness, it's about identifying paths to referral, supporting our communities. But obviously the enforcement is a critical element. So when I'm looking at the three areas, I just was obviously considering what the greatest challenges are. And for me, the greatest challenges within the communities at the moment are street drinking. That's a real issue for our communities, and that's articulated by communities across all of Newport. Issues are relating to harassment, alarm and distress. So, people being abusive to members of the community, and also the use or misuse of e-bikes and scooters. That's really a critical area within Newport that's causing a massive issue. And certainly from my background, there are broader issues in relation to the use of e-bikes and scooters around criminality and drug use and supply, which obviously is a significant issue for our communities. So from my perspective, when I did this research, the critical element was that they were enforceable, not conditional. I just wanted to respectfully raise, I know we're talking about the city centre, but I think it's important just to incorporate the three PSPOs in the updates I'm going to give you. So in relation to the pill PSPO, a fairly contentious area was that has been mentioned and that I felt was important to remove was in relation to the use or misuse of sexual services within the pill area. Obviously, the sexual services are covered under the Sexual Offence Act 2003, and they are really serious criminal offences. And what I did want to happen is that an issue of that nature was in a PSPO which is relating to antisocial behaviour, and the suggestion was that the exploitation of the most vulnerable in our community is an antisocial behaviour issue. It's not, it's a serious criminal offence. So from my perspective, it was important to differentiate. And as a result of my background, I'm aware that when police have two operations that are in response to the challenges around the sexual offences, and that's Operation Wyvern. That's a proactive operation looking at offenders who were involved in this criminality. And Operation Pathway targets the most vulnerable, invariably, not exclusively, female individuals who are exploited. So there is a dedicated response from a policing perspective in relation to these challenges. I didn't want to undermine the seriousness of these issues with it being in a PSPO. Notwithstanding, I'm not suggesting the issues around ASB are not serious, because they are, but it's important to differentiate. And the Sexual Offences Act really covers those issues. I've also had a quick look at the data relating to the public consultation so far relating to the three PSPOs, and we've had a really positive response. We've had 100 in relation to the city centre. This was last week. 69 for pill and 37 Mace Glass. Obviously, Mace Glass is an extension and not the full renewal, so it's a small element. When I look at the results so far, there's been overwhelming support in relation to the renewal, overwhelming, well in the 90s, high 90s. And in relation to the areas and questions that are asked around the amendments to the prohibitions, again, it's in the high 90s in relation to the support from the public of whether we should actually amend the prohibitions. So initially, the feedback is really positive in relation to our suggestions, and the community want this to happen to obviously have a positive impact on the quality of their lives. And I thought it was also relevant just to mention, just from a response perspective from my team and the broad perspective, perhaps historically we've been quite fragmented in relation to our response around challenges within the community. As a result of my connection there from a policing and partnership perspective, everything we now do is from a multi-agency perspective. I've started an initiative around days and weeks of action, starts on the city centre, focusing on the challenges. So we're now looking at working and identifying the drivers and enablers around this sort of behaviour to really get to the root cause and put together long-term sustainable problem-solving approaches. We had a day of action a few weeks ago, overwhelming success. This was reported in the South Wales Argus. We got a week of action on the 23rd of September. Multi-agency response will be themed, and we will be again reporting on that beforehand, during, and after to show the outcome. And that won't just be an isolated response. It'll be then just become business as usual with the police and our partners. So from my perspective, obviously the feedback has been really supportive in relation to the plans. I'm really grateful for your time, and I hope that helped.
Very good, thank you. Paul.
So if you've got any more you need to say, or my apologies, Councillor Jewett, I should have invited you to speak at the beginning.
Not
So
at all. Can I just say that nobody wants to have public space protection orders, but we've got a situation where we need to keep members of the public safe in their own environments and in their areas where they live. So that's these are used to manage specific nuisance behaviours and for the benefit of everyone. So I just want to thank Sylvia and Paul for their excellent work in doing what they're doing to keep us safe, and recommend that after the consultation these extensions will be brought in.
thanks, Councillor Jewett. I'm going to slightly clarify what I said at the beginning as well. I mean, it does make sense, obviously, to deal with the three PSPOs together rather than individually. So I'll open the floor to questions. Councillor Marshall.
Thank you. It's just in relation to the question about use of vehicles, and also within the city centre side of things, and about enforcement. There's wordings of unsafe or inconsiderate, so it's just about is there inconsistencies about how it can be enforced? Something as a local representative, and I know colleagues are also followed up with this. It's about the Uber bikers, the Just Eat bikers, the Deliveroo bikers.
Yeah.
What deems unsafe because they're going around at whatever speed they're going at. Stuff like that. There, would that be deemed as unsafe? How would you interpret that? Would that be able to be enforced?
Well, I appreciate what you're saying, and it is subjective. However, my understanding is that it would be a designated area for perhaps Uber, people using a bike to deliver, and individuals to safely use that designated area. But obviously, we're looking at areas where pedestrians are walking, and anybody using bikes and on bikes in those areas obviously will be breaching the PSPO because they'll be in the restricted area of using that. But like I say, for me, I appreciate it is subjective. However, I think my officers, and obviously with my background, I know police officers will be looking at awareness and education. We'll be having significant signage, but the important message is that there are designated areas, or there will be designated areas to utilise for the areas that you've articulated. But outside of that, unfortunately, we've got to also contingent for the safety of members of the public who are perhaps shopping within the area.
Okay, thank you. Within that is obviously about the areas, and you said about signposting. Would the whole area be signposted properly? Because obviously, you could go into an area. It's not saying you are now in the PSPO area, except for sometimes you get like a little white letter.
Yeah.
So it's with it, something on lampposts or indicate visually to educate members of the public that they are in this area.
Absolutely.
And that these certain conditions are for them
Yes.
to follow within that area.
So the plan, council, if I can help, is that we plan to have 3 or 4 really large signs that will be with sort of steel connections to the posts. So there'll be large signs, and that will be the entrance to the respective areas that we're talking about. City centre pillar mains glass, and then we'll have a significant number, and my teams are actually doing them now, where they will be on the lampposts, strategically placed across the respective areas within the 3 PSPO areas to articulate what the prohibitions are, so they're clear and there are no sort of contentious areas in relation to what you can and can't do. And also, as I said, because I've now got designated staff on the city centre and in the areas, they will provide that awareness, education and enforcement where required. But like I say, the important thing for me is not just about enforcement. There are critical other areas around support, as I said, referral and other mechanisms we need to consider.
Councillor Jones.
Hi there. On a staffing level and your members, your crew and whatever, when you're trying to enforce the new signs in these sort of safe zones, etc., have you got enough manpower to sort of like apprehend somebody or prevent it, and really are they under threat of attack? What is the front line action at the moment? What's the biggest fear?
So in answer to your question, Councillor, from a resourcing perspective, we haven't got this, the resourcing to cope with the demand, and that's across all agencies. That I accept that. But I think for myself, and obviously working with Sylvia, the critical element for me is we have a number of key core priorities, 3 or 4. So those 3 or 4 priorities are articulated to my team, and they're aware of that. And at the moment, the key core priority is the city centre. I appreciate there are other priorities. So, what I do is allocate the resource in according to priority, threat, risk and harm and demand. If obviously officers are faced with situations, they've got body cams, they invariably work with the local police, who obviously I've got strong connections with. They've got radios and communication. They know I've implemented training for them in relation to conflict management. So they have that requisite knowledge and skills to deal with issues of that nature. And just to give you an example, 48 hours ago, one of my team was spat at outside Tesco's, and we've dealt with that incident. So within a matter of no time, an officer is up at the civic centre dealing with it. We got the CCTV, we've identified the individual, and that officer dealt with the issue in an appropriate professional manner. So yes, we are going to have issues and challenges. No, we don't have sufficient resourcing, but my focus to the team is these are the 4 critical areas that I want to focus on. And if we deal with those issues with long-term sustainable problem-solving approaches, looking at the drivers and enablers for those issues, we're going to have to be far more effective than scattergunning, because that's not at all effective.
Well, thank you for your comments. I think I think that quite well. And it's a conflict here. We just seen what's happened around the country not long ago, and you try to avoid that conflict.
Yes.
But once you know there's a pattern, and you can see the pattern, it's just tagging that resources to try and enable it. It's no good just putting signs up and not be able to enforce it.
No,
because they'll just look at it and go, nah.
But as I said when I provided you with a briefing, the prohibitions historically between 2021 and now were conditional, but now they're enforceable. So there are implications for behaviours, and my staff are so relieved that hopefully these will now be implemented and we can have an impact on the quality of lives of our communities. And the individuals will now get the message that if they breach these prohibitions, there are implications. But notwithstanding, if we identify an individual who needs help and support through housing, rough sleeping, alcohol misuse, mental health issues, my team are also now aware that there are routes to support and refer to help them. So there's a broader holistic approach in relation to dealing with the issues. It's not just about enforcement.
Sorry, will you be using like a media platform, or will it be literature going out in the newsletters? Just because obviously we want as many people to know there's a change.
Yes.
And there's accountability then, yes.
Yeah, so in addition to signage, obviously we'll be looking at media campaigns in relation to that. I'm running days and weeks of action. That's going to be communicated from a media perspective. Like, for example, the week of action, we're going to do something with comms, with Kent Police and the council prior to, during and after. So we're going to really start to get a buzz within Newport in relation to the work we're doing, and hopefully that will start to have a positive impact as well.
And I just wanted to add, because I think that, the debate around resources is a different one. What we're talking about here is we had some provisions in place. We don't think we're effective enough. We're trying to create better tools that the officers can use for their interventions to be as effective as possible. It's not only for our officers, it's also for police officers who, they have a presence there and they can act. And, we're there's that demand for them to be able to do the job better.
So I appreciate that. Thank you. It sounds like a lot of work's going on with.
Thanks, Councillor Jones.
Councillor Hughes, sorry, I'd like to go away first thing then.
Broadly welcome the changes. So I think it's going to help. Certainly help. Really helps your officers. Thank you. Achieve what you need to do. But we do. There's the difficulty for me really is that we're living in a city where I've lived in big cities, Brighton, London, Manchester. So it's we've got a relatively well-contained city compared to some of these big cities. We've got a riverbank. We've got one major high street. Police off that. So it's relatively. You can say straightforward in that sense, but it's a relatively straightforward area to contain in that sense. I think we've got a lot of people. So if you're looking at the suburbs and people don't come into the city centre that often, I do. there's still historical, certainly, perception that came up in council not too long ago that it's a dangerous city centre. I've certainly never felt that it's any more dangerous. Certainly feel it's a lot less dangerous than some city centres. But I think that perception is there, I think, because often when you do come down to the city centre, wasn't that long ago I was by the market, bikes going up from McDonald's, electric bikes up to the crosskeys area, the pub there, doing 40, 50 miles an hour on the street. Thought of it. I wouldn't say the response to that report was particularly strong, but alongside that, you've got open drug dealing, you've got open groups of use, which they may well be doing nothing, but they're intimidating for older people that come to the city centre. They might become familiar with the market. We spend a lot of effort and time getting that right. The perception is that 500-600 yards walking to that market will put them off coming back to Newport probably ever again. Yeah. I think we've got to get on top of that. I think, I do agree with Councillor Nash. I think that the city centre area should be no zone full stop for motorised vehicles. Because if you're in a pedestrianised zone, people expect it to be a pedestrianised zone. And I think, we were sure you watching the news last night about how London dealing with motorised bikes, and it's very hard. It's a very big punishment. Take the bikes off them. I think we need to move to thinking. And I know from what you report saying what you're saying, we need to move to a situation where the focus really is on trying to achieve that, trying to change that perception around to making it feel like a safer city. That'll happen with you need to be more visible. You need to have your officers and police more visible in that zone. I don't think it is strong enough at the moment. Great news about the signage, because I saw more warning signs in the swimming pool using them for some holidays, and actually we've got in the city centre, so that needs to change. And I'm not sure how many enforcements we've actually carried out over the period this has been in place. Personally, I don't know. I wouldn't imagine it being very high. I think that needs to turn around for people to actually realise, unless you're enforcing, that's not going to change behaviour, is it? So I think there's a long way to go, but I think a good starting point. But everything I talked about today,
No, I concur with everything you said. I say having been people for 30 years, I understand there are vast challenges. Just a couple of points to pick up on. The response and the approach historically, certainly from my team's perspective, and that's no criticism, has been quite fragmented. The response from a police perspective, there are patrols going on, but my background is around serious and organised crime, and everything in relation to that is a multi-agency response. So I've said to my team, and I'm working with seniors within the police in Newport, that we have to adopt that approach. And like I said, it's only now, because I've said this will happen, that we're now starting that multi-agency response. And what that will do, we're not just talking about resolving an issue and putting a plaster on it now. We're looking at what are the drivers and enablers of the issue, the key core issues within the city centre. And just to give you some context in relation to that, so the drinking around Upper Dock Street. So the focus for me has been on Upper Dock Street and looking at the key core issues there. And we're looking at, we've got a problem-oriented policing plan around that. We're looking at a design of crime. So looking at what are the drivers and enablers. So one of the drivers and enablers is that the drinkers are getting single cans from local stores, because obviously that they're financially bereft, so that they're getting single cans. That's obviously breaching licensing. So we're bringing in the colleagues from licensing to work with us and the police and trading standards and mental health team and Helen Jones from housing to look at a holistic approach to these issues, so they can't get the single cans. So when they can't get the single cans, and we're helping and supporting them in relation to other issues, that then is going to hopefully provide long-term sustainable problem-solving approaches. And by bringing in this design of crime and our problem-oriented policing approach, we're looking at a broader approach, which is documented. We've never had a system before, so where the police's approach is consistently recorded on a problem-solving plan. We can now implement that because of my connections with the police. So everything is now multi-agency because that's the only way we're gonna actually have a sort of a positive impact. Like Councillor Marshall said, the signage is going to improve. We're going to have a multi-agency approach. And like I say, it's not just going to be a fad and a phase. It's going to be a consistent approach where we can have these action days. The business is already saying, you know, we've not seen so much activity. They're really feeling supported. You know, I'm working closely with Roger Jevons, who's great and really supportive and knows what's going on. So I'm really hoping that I agree with what you're saying. Things aren't going to happen overnight. They're going to take a significant period of time. But, you know, when you've got the right plans in place, you've got the right connections, right support, I think that difference will be, you know, we'll see. And I think the important thing is as well is messaging. You know, how do we message what we're doing? And I've mentioned to Sylvia what my plan is as well, is that we're doing this, these regular days and weeks of action. I've also created a performance management tool. So all the work that we're doing, if yourself, Councillor, said to me, right, Paul, show me the work that you've done between these time parameters on the city centre, I can, because of the performance tool I've created, I can give you what interactions have taken place, what businesses have been interacted, what patrols have taken place, what enforcement has taken place, specifically for that time parameter, for that area, and that goes to the whole of Newport. All my team now feed into that, so I can produce that information for you. So you know, we're starting to really develop and evolve our processes to be current for the challenges that we've got.
There's a comms plan attached to that as well, to ensure that people are aware of the activity that is taking place.
That's really important, I think, because, you know, we have major events here. We have private, you know, all the water being stuff we've got going on in the military. And I think for anybody attending those in the city centre, it felt remarkably safe, remarkably brilliantly organised, and really good fun for everybody in the city, with thousands of people coming down. The comms part is the silly stuff that happens when the town's relatively quiet gets into the front page of the Argus. The other stuff, sometimes not so, in the way that it should. But then, you know, if we can get that positive message out about what's and the changes, it's going to be great stuff.
Yeah, I think Councillor Hughes is absolutely right in what he said, and it's getting the positive message out. Simply went around with the leader of the council, Councillor Clark, myself, the officers, city centre manager, and we did a walkabout through the city centre. We aim to do the same thing, myself and the city centre manager, in 6 months' time, to see improvements. And in actual fact, what did we see this time? There was no serious antisocial behaviour. So it's perception, as you said, Councillor Hughes. We need to get over that. There were some minor elements of antisocial behaviour. There was one rider riding quite fast on the bike. So we are monitoring it. It is being tackled by the officers. Things will improve.
Thanks, Councillor Jewett. I've got to say, from my perspective as well, you know, what we've got, I've just really saying the whole is really positive. You know, the long-term systematic approach and the multi-agency approach is so important. You know, I put a stinging faster approach, which looks great this month, but next month you're back to square one. You know, it's not sustainable. So you know, that does sound really good. I know the last council meeting, as you mentioned, Councillor Jewett, I mentioned the perception as opposed to the reality of what's in the city centre. And it is that public perception that needs tackling. And you know, you mentioned about having data and building up data that you can actually quote. I think that's going to be so important going forward. So we can not just say, oh, we think the city centre is better. We've got the evidence, we've got the proof, it needs to be data driven.
With the support, thank you. So with the support of Sylvia, I'm looking at, based on the work that we're doing, to produce a bi-monthly sort of newsletter, which obviously we can put onto the site so we can highlight and articulate. And I'm not data driven. I'm sort of older, and so I'm not hugely into data. But it's just really to be informative to our communities, and obviously to your respective selves in relation to what we're doing, the sort of probative value. And like I said, that would just be a bi-monthly newsletter, which I think will be really helpful. So we've one of my Intel team has created that. So that's a draft. So I'll obviously share that with Sylvia, and that will just, again, with days of action, weeks of action, that will just become business as usual. So that the community be aware of what we're doing, and they can obviously comment and provide suggestions in relation to how we could perhaps amend, update, and adopt our approach.
Thanks. Councillor Davis online?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, thanks for doing the report. It's come across quite well, actually. A couple of things that I'd like to mention is, I know it's gone out to consultation now. What sort of, what will happen when you've got that information? Will it change the wording of the report that we've read today with the additional changes? Is that going to change further?
Not sure what you mean, but the proposal was to amend the wording to the new wording included in the report without for consultation. So obviously, depending on the outcome of the consultation, we need to make a decision. But results so far, and that's provisional, because I think consultation actually finishes tomorrow or the day after. But responses collated so far, we've had provisional access to, are so supportive that everything indicates that yes, the proposal is going to be to present the amended orders with the amended wording for renewal to the cabinet council meeting later this month.
Okay. Another thing I wanted to mention was, I mean, very often I'm catching the bus late at night by the market. I have seen a lot of antisocial behaviour there with regards to drinking, but I've also seen the police come along and take the drinks off them and pour them away. What concerns me, though, is I know the wording has been changed for this report, but it's like you mentioned earlier, once the police go, they just go in the shop and they buy more. What I was wondering was, with regards to fines, how are the fines going to be done in relation to repeat offenders? Because I personally think that it's okay to say, well, you will be fined £100 or whatever, but that isn't happening. So therefore, the people that are doing this, the antisocial behaviour and the drinking, just carry on. Because, so I was wondering, with what was going to be done with regards to fine monitoring.
Councillor, this is Paul. I can help if that's okay. So in relation to that, like I say, our focus at the moment is not just the city centre, but up at Dock Street. In relation to the individuals, we've recently recruited an individual who has got a background and expertise in relation to intelligence, and my background is that as well from a policing perspective. And intelligence is critical. So in other words, we record and we have information relating to the individuals that are involved in issues of this nature, and that's recorded. Over the last 6 months, I've also been looking to implement something called an ASB, anti-social behaviour strike process. So historically, there have been, all agencies have been involved in issuing strike letters to anti-social behaviour individuals who are involved in anti-social behaviour. That's been fragmented, and all agencies have been issued a letter to say, you've been involved in antisocial behaviour and you need to stop, or there will be implications. I've now brought all the agencies together, and we've now got across the whole of Newport, a consistent antisocial behaviour strike process, which starts on the 10th of September. So in relation to repeat individuals, they will feature on our intelligence database. They will then feature on our ASB strike process, so we can then escalate their behaviour depending obviously on repeat individuals. So the fines will be given, they will feature on our intelligence system, and they will then feature on our ASB strike process, where we will escalate their behaviour if required.
Okay, that's lovely, and I do commend the fact that you're bringing in all these multi-agencies to work together on it, because I think if it was just left to one, it wouldn't work. So I commend you on bringing all the agencies together, and thank you for answering my questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Davis. Has anybody else got? Councillor Marshall.
Thank you. The first one is just a typo highlight on the people and the head of policy people transformation. It says that Maze Masters Award. It's not. It's part of the Dare Award. So it's just a clarification if that could be amended, just obviously for clarity if anyone wants to question it. The other one is around the basically. We hear it council, we hear it, from members of the public about the aggressive beggars. So it's just basically earlier we got told about that partnership working, with other agencies and that. And just want to know, would that relate into that? Because that's one of the other negatives that we hear all the time as elected ward members, as why people don't take out cash machines, they prefer cards. Obviously, cash is king, preferably because it's a little, in the local area, it's better. So we should be able to allow people to access it safely, but then able to go around their business without having people to do that. But again, for those people to do that, are they being supported in whatever actions that they do?
So I can help with that, Councillor. So yes, in relation to that, I'm acutely aware of the challenges around aggressive begging. So in relation to the multi-agency approach, 23rd of September, I've linked in with a colleague of mine who I've known quite well historically, Helen Jones. She's the rough sleeper coordinator, and she is absolutely superb in relation to her knowledge, the support mechanisms in place. So she's going to be intrinsically linked with my team and the multi-agency team in relation to as a rough sleeper coordinator. So any individuals we identify, what she looks at is a holistic approach around sort of housing support that she can provide to those individuals to take them out of that sort of environment that they're in. So Helen is linked into us for the whole of that week and is now linked in as a part of the approach around the plans that I've just articulated.
Great, because obviously some of that links into the other stuff about, like, as you said, the buying the one can of drink or whatever have you, things like that there. So it all fits in within that.
Yeah.
And so it's good and positive to hear.
But I think the important thing is that we evolve, and if for example we're involved in the day or week of action and we identify that another partner should be involved, then obviously we don't just brief, we debrief, which is as critical if not more so, to understand the needs and sort of the community. So my intelligence officer is also linked in with sort of immigration enforcement, so we're looking to bring in sort of broader partners in relation to the challenges that we face on the city centre. And like I say, I just wanted to really develop and evolve, and also just become, it's now the norm. This is our approach, is the norm.
And just one more. I know you said newsletter, and forgive me for being that difference of age and what I'm going to say, but on Instagram and things like that, there, if anyone has them, there's things like the zombies of Newport and that type of thing, videos of the occurrences that happens by the newer bus station and things like that there. So just whether or not, when you're having these action days, when action has been taken, is there a ways to bring stuff onto video, into pictures and things like that onto these other sites, because that's where younger people will be seeing it as well as the older people. I understand there's difference of there, but also the demographics of reading it, because we do have like young girls that go to university or college and things like that, want to go out and they're seeing this type of things that actually Newport's not my thing, let's get on the train station, go to Cardiff or Bristol. So it's things like that that will actually say that actually Newport is a good place to go, and things like that, alongside all the other things that we have, like people go to Comic-Con and stay the night in Newport and want to have a meal and drink and whatever. So it's all part of that collective.
So I'm linked in with Matthew Close from our comms team, and he is also linked in with Gwen Police comms team. So like I said, the plan is that we will do a joint response, and they will obviously use the appropriate media in relation to what that looks like. And like I say, Matthew wants to do a pre-week sort of disclosure. He's going to come out with this on the day and take obviously a sort of appropriate footage, and then we'll do, using my performance framework, we'll then do a post outcome. So it'll be a really broad sort of piece in relation to cascading this to the community. But obviously from a comms perspective, they have all the social media networks that they utilize. So in answer to your question, absolutely, yes.
I think in terms of the actual content, we'll have to follow advice and action from our colleagues from the comms team, but you have a very valid point suggested there, and we'll make sure that they get that information. Suggestions.
On that basis, if you feel me on that side. So if you receive feedback on social media, because obviously in our lovely community groups, we always have feedback on that side, are they being picked up and actually actioned so that if people feel, you know, say like if it is an aggressive behaviour, because that's the one I mentioned earlier, there's an aggressive behaviour currently at the moment, like not necessarily reporting an emergency type thing with the police or anything like that, but is things like that, like intelligence being fed in, that type of thing, and is that being approached and collected?
Yes.
So people are heard.
So all the feedback we have, obviously, you know, feedback is critical because I want to develop and evolve. And from an intelligence perspective, like I said, I've now got a dedicated member of staff that I wanted to have because I want to be intelligence driven. Just as well, in relation to that, I'm now going to be set up a tasking process within my team. And I appreciate if you know about tasking, I apologise, but obviously from a policing perspective, that's how we prioritise our threat, risk and harm. And obviously the team are aware what the main key core priorities are, and that's based on the intelligence picture. So by us collating all the intelligence information, we can produce a tasking document so the team are aware of what the priorities are, and obviously we can focus on that. And then when those issues are resolved, we can say, right, okay, we're now going to focus in these areas relating to these priorities, and that's always intelligence driven.
Next issue, Paul. You go back to the strike conversation you talked about
Yes.
just earlier. So somebody's committing antisocial behaviour in Newport Town Centre now.
Yes.
Can you tell me what happens next?
Okay, so let's go back to the conversation I had. So what's happened historically is that the police, housing, the council, all had their own ASB processes where if, for example, Paul Davis was behaving in a certain way on the city centre, and that was witnessed by somebody from the council, we could send a letter to that individual to say your behaviour was inappropriate, and we're asking you to refrain from that. If you continue, what we're going to do is, if that stops, there's no further implications. What could happen is that a number of agencies could send the same letter to the same individual. So when I joined, I was like, this can't continue.
Can I come back there quickly?
Yes.
So if I'm walking down the high street tomorrow
Yes.
and I drop a cigarette butt in the high street,
Yes.
I have £100 plus fine for it.
Yes.
If I park for 20 minutes on the WL line over, I'll get an instant reprimand, maybe £100 fine plus again. So if I commit antisocial behaviour in town centre, I have a warning letter.
No.
That's the power I need to understand.
As Councillor Davis said, if there are repeat individuals who are constantly causing antisocial behaviour on the city centre, I will then consider, or my ASB manager will consider, whether that individual needs to be part of the ASB strike process and consider from a multi-agency perspective in relation to their behaviour. Is their behaviour having a significant impact on the quality of life of the community, and is the fine having an impact from refraining from their behaviours? If the answer is no, we will then consider sending a strike process, which will escalate then to a behavioural order of some description. If it escalates, hopefully the fine or the initial strike letter will stop their behaviours, but they will then feature on our intelligence system, and we will then be aware of Paul Davis's behaviour. And if his behaviour continues, obviously we will escalate that behaviour, but from a multi-agency perspective. So we could bring in mental health, we could bring in Gwent Drug and Alcohol Service, we could bring Helen Jones in from Rough Sleeping.
I think
Depends on the
And I
needs.
think what Paul says, that you can still issue a fine on the spot.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you're
that's the
going to
part.
get a string of letters before
definitely
anything happens.
And I don't think we should, in the sense that
No.
you saw a lot of the conversations coming back to people with, a lot of people on the streets do have, and we shouldn't be singling them out for instant reprobation. We should be dealing with their issues. But when we've got large gangs of youth causing quite substantial criminal behaviour, which is essentially criminal behaviour, isn't it? If they're threatening, intimidating, aggressive, then I think sometimes it's the hard hit that's going to stop that behaviour in the town centre.
We would then leave that to the police to deal with from a criminal perspective. But just because somebody dropped a cigarette butt on the floor, that doesn't necessarily mean we would enforce them. But it could be that awareness and education is appropriate.
Yeah.
It could be that we don't necessarily enforce because it is, we use our discretion and
That's what I was getting at. I just didn't want people to think
No,
that
definitely not.
what they perceive as relatively minor gets financial, but people who are causing issues with the town centre and economically and getting a proportionate.
But that will then go on our intelligence database. So we will be aware of that individual, and obviously we can see a chronology of their history, and obviously what for them in an appropriate, proportionate manner based on their behaviour history.
Thanks for clearing. Sure.
Can I just say the vast majority, the thousands of people who use the city centre do so properly. There are just a few who act in an antisocial way. These PSBOs are there as tools for the people who keep the team that keep our city centre safe.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the age-old story, isn't it? It's always the vocal minority or the obvious minority that attract all the headlines. Like the vast majority of people, yeah, as you say. Councillor Marshall.
Thank you. It's just again about the partnership side of things there. So obviously we said about the homeless teams, etc., and other, with the police and things like that. There is anything linked with the social landlords, because obviously there is big social landlords within our city centre, etc., and other areas. How is that incorporated? Because it's kind of when you said about the different letters to different organisations, the police will be doing one thing, then obviously people see homes and others will be sending letters and things like that. There is there a kind of working together now to oversee that and actually say a one-point approach and actually say one letter is one letter for more.
Absolutely. Angela Harris, who I know historically from Mike's background, she's involved in the ASB strike process, and Claire Derwin from Pobble is also involved. They're also involved in the multi-agency days routes of action. So absolutely, what we but as again, councillor, if somebody brings an issue or challenge to my attention and we haven't got a partner to continge for that, I will ensure that partner is brought in. What we tried to do, we had about sort of 8 weeks of meetings in relation to the ASB strike process, because it's taken quite a bit of organising. Because, like I say, when you've got so many organisations across Newport dealing with so many issues, it was almost like, sort of, excuse my terminology, sort of herding cats in essence. So I brought them all together and said, this is what we're going to do, and we've now agreed. But if during the initial processes we identify another partner, we will then bring those in.
Like that. Right, is anybody else got any other questions? I can't see any hands at the moment, but right, so we're on to the formation of the comments and recommendations. So that's why I was just clarifying with Neil there.
Okay, got the general comments from the committee, praising the work, commending bringing in the multi-agencies to work together. Advise that the multi-agency approach is important, important to get communications out for the positive changes. Councillor Marshall's comment about the title about Maze Glass not being a ward, and also your comment, Councillor Marshall, about the newsletter, actually feel the positives of the city centre to promote the reports associated with the visit. Apart from that, was there any other comments or recommendations the committee would like to make in regards to the changes in the wording about the SBOs?
Just checking online as well. Is there anything there that's been missed, or anything that wants to be added? Everyone's happy with that? Okay, thank you, Neil. And thank you to Councillor Jewett for contributing. And thanks to Sylvia and Paul for the report and answering all the questions. Thanks for your time.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Right, we're just going to pause the meeting just for a couple of minutes because we've got a presentation coming up. We just need to make the arrangements for that. So just a 2 or 3 minute pause. I'll start that again. Thanks, Leah. Right, so welcome back, everyone. We're going to move on to item 4 on the agenda, Newport Way Savers. We've got Penny Goodwin, who's going to give us a presentation. This is the first time Way Savers have been in front of Scrutiny for a few years, so we're going to find out a bit more about how Way Savers works and operates and partners with Newport Council. And hand over to you, Penny.
I don't know if I'm having a just please.
So we're going to
Is she there?
my apologies. I should invite the cabinet member first. Councillor Forsey, do you want to say anything in introduction? Councillor Forsey, oh, I'm muting.
I can't see you, sorry. It's my fault.
We can see you and we can hear you, so feel free to carry on.
Well, I don't know what's going on. I didn't have anything particular that I wanted to say this afternoon. I just wanted to you know, to observe and to be up to date with the questions and you know, what members thought about it. So thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. Thanks for the reminder.
And if I may, just very briefly introduction. I don't want to go into the topic because Penny will cover it in the presentation. Just wanted to say that obviously it was identified that we have a long established relationship with Way Savers. We've been working together for a long time in an effective partnership, and other similar arrangements were coming to Scrutiny, but this had never been you know, reporting to it. So it was, I think I need an addition, that this is the first time we do it. And I think the content of the report kind of reflects that in a way, because it's kind of an introduction to the partnership and the activities that it covers. And we would welcome feedback on a more formal content moving forward, perhaps on an annual reporting, what kind of things you'd like to see, if there's anything that hasn't been covered, etc. So that's something we can discuss later on when the questions come. I'll pass it on to Penny to go over the presentation now.
Thanks very much. So yeah, just to follow on from what Sylvia was saying, this is our first time at Scrutiny. I was here probably about 10 years ago, but I think everybody has changed since then. So certainly in its current guise, this is the first meeting that we've attended. So my plan is to give you a bit of an overview of the charity and the company, as I know lots of people know a little bit about what we do, but not many people know everything about what Way Savers does. So my plan is to give you a bit of information about, you know, the charity and the company as a whole. So if we can get to the first slide, please. So, okay, who are Way Savers? So we are a group term covering 2 distinct legal entities. That's Way Savers Charitable Trust, which was established in 1995, and Way Savers Recycling Limited, which was established a year later in 96. So we started life as a small environmental Friends of the Earth organisation. And our main focus was on promoting the importance of recycling and environmental issues in Newport. We started with a bit of furniture collection for reuse and collecting paper from offices, and then latterly we started collecting it from the curbside, from people's houses. So we used to go around to a number of people's houses in Newport and collect bundles of paper by hand, and we used to take that back to our depot, separate it out and deliver it to the local paper mill. Now, it's developed a bit since then. So it's expanded quite a lot since the turn of the millennium, when we started a more formal relationship with Newport City Council, and we started to deliver the curbside service on their behalf. I joined the company in 2004. We had just 26 members of staff, and today the group employs 132 staff, and we've got over 115 volunteers, and we operate in 7 local authority areas. So it's certainly a lot bigger than when I first joined us. So if we can move on to the next slide, please, which is all about our visions and values. So what binds us all together is our vision and our values. So last year, people from across the organisation worked really hard to define what our vision was and what our values were. So to put down on paper what's important for each and every one of us. And we said that our vision is to create a sustainable future where waste reduction and reuse is commonplace, and what cannot be reduced or reused is recycled by methods that retain the value of that material. And we use this process to create opportunities to reduce poverty and to educate and support our communities. We then went on to define what our values were, and we decided that they were environment, community, and our people. So we believe in a circular economy and the power of recycling and reuse for positive action in our community. We believe in supporting our community, being inclusive and providing help where and when it's needed. And we believe we can make a positive difference to the lives of our staff, volunteers and placements will support their well-being, provide opportunities and create a sense of belonging. And at this stage, I wanted to just give you a brief definition of circular economy, because we use that term quite a lot and it's a term that I'm not sure if everybody is aware of. So the circular economy is a model of production and consumption which involves sharing, leasing, reusing, repairing, refurbishing and recycling existing material so that products remain in use for as long as possible. So keeping that item for as long as possible. So that's circular economy. So if we can move on to the next slide. So how do those visions and values actually translate into action? And that's what I'm going to tell you a bit about now. So a little bit of information about Waste Savers Charitable Trust. Next slide, please. So the charity runs a range of different services in Newport. We run PEAK. PEAK is our alternative education provision. We work with people aged 14 to 16 who find mainstream education isn't for them. So based at our site underneath the Transporter Bridge in Newport, which is where our recycling site is based, we engage the children in practical activities, achieving Agorad Cymru units. So in things like art and design, photography, woodworking, bike repair, cookery and plumbing, along with many more probably not mentioned. And the idea is to try and hide numeracy and literacy in practical activities. A lot of the young kids, a lot of the kids that we get have undiagnosed learning difficulties, and you'd be surprised at the number of 14 and 15-year-olds who come to us and cannot read and cannot write. So we try and hide that education in practical activities, because obviously mainstream education doesn't suit everybody. So the children are referred to us directly from schools in Newport and Torvine, as well as from the PRU. We've got quite a close working relationship with the Bridge Achievement Centre. We work on a 6-to-1 ratio to ensure the children get the attention that they need to thrive. And all our children leave with qualifications, with some going back to school and some going onwards to college and into employment. So next slide, please. And we've got reuse. So we run 10 reuse shops across South Wales, and our flagship store is in Maindy in Newport. We bought this building in 2020 after a very, very long and drawn out negotiating period. It was previously a department store, it was quick save, it was co-op. And when we took it over, it had been derelict for about 10 years. We've invested almost £1 million in the building to create a community hub for reuse and repair activities, working quite closely with Maindy Unlimited. So inside it is our community furniture shop, providing low-priced furniture, electrical items and IT equipment to people in the community. Maindy Makerspace have 3 workshops upstairs where creative people can get together and be creative and use the community-owned assets within those rooms. As well as it housing our IT reuse and recycling programme, our repair cafe, our nappy library and our newly opened library of things. Next slide, please. So our IT department occupies 2 large rooms on the first floor of the building, and it's a hive of activity. If you've driven past the reuse centre, you'll probably think that not much is going on in there, and that's absolute nonsense. There's loads going on in that building. So the IT department is a little bit like MI5. You never know what you're going to find when you walk in that room. And we take IT equipment from businesses and from local authorities, mainly PCs and laptops, refurbish what we can and recycle what we can't. It's led by our IT manager, Alan, and a team of volunteers who are learning vital skills in building PCs for them to be used again. We always have anywhere between about 10 and 15 volunteers in at a time in that room, because it is such a popular thing for people to do. And a lot of people use those skills that they're learning in the IT department as a springboard to go on into find work in the IT world. We get computers from a wide variety of locations, local businesses, local authorities, but we're always interested in more. So if anybody works in a business who is keen to get rid of some IT equipment, please just consider us, because it enables us to give that IT out to local businesses, local communities, local people and groups who might need it for free. Next slide, please. So the reuse centre also houses one of our repair cafes. We've got 2 repair cafes that we operate, one in Pontypool Markets and one at the reuse centre in Newport, and they are open a couple of mornings and a couple of afternoons a week. Here we offer repair services for anything from clocks to bikes, very similar to what's being run in Remake in the centre of town, but obviously on the east bank of the river. Next slide, please. Then we've got reuse shops at HWRCs. So HWRCs, for those that don't know, household waste recycling centres. There are a lot of acronyms in waste, so I apologise in advance. So we run 9 other reuse shops in addition to the one in Mendy across South Wales, from Aberdare down to Penalta and Caerphilly, over to Lambyway, Cardiff, up to New Inn. And the majority of these are on or near HWRCs, including our own shop, our tip shop at Docks Lane. Here the teams divert items right at the point of disposal. So if you go to the tip to get rid of the contents of your garage, you have an option to donate those items for reuse rather than throwing them in a skip. The items diverted at the shops are generally smaller items, something that you can fit in your car or take away from us once you've bought. So we don't tend to have sofas and beds or anything like that at these shops. It's the smaller items. So clothes, bric-a-brac, exercise equipment, general collectibles, that sort of thing. And each shop is really different and it's got its own personality. So, for example, you can get equestrian equipment, saddles and reins in Llantrisant. Clothes are the biggest seller in Pentrabach, in Merthyr, and Newport does a roaring trade in toilets and sinks. I don't know why, it's just the way it is. Collectively, the reuse shops divert around 1,000 tonnes a year from landfill and disposal. So it's a real central part of the circular economy. Next slide, please. Nappy Library. So another project that's really central to our reuse agenda is the Nappy Library. So Laura, in this lovely picture here, is the only Nappy Library coordinator in the UK who is paid to do her job. Usually those roles are voluntary, but the charity supports her because we believe it's a really important role that she's doing. A Nappy Library, for those of you that don't know, is a resource for parents to encourage the use of reusable nappies over disposables. Reusable nappies have come a long way since terry towelings and pins and the infamous soaking bucket. But navigating the different types of nappy is daunting for many parents. And a lot of them will give it a go and then give up after a few weeks because they just can't get the hang of it. And that's where Laura comes in. So babies comes in all shapes and sizes, so do nappies, and Laura's job is to help the parents try to find the right nappy for the right baby. Job's free advice and guidance, and parents are able to hire nappy kits for a small price to see what brands work for them. She also takes donations of nappies and gives them out to parents for free. So at the moment we've got a campaign in a couple of the Valley authorities, I think Blind and Gwent's one of them, where we're putting reusable nappies in all the libraries. So if a parent goes in and is caught short, they can take one of these reusable nappies along with the details of Laura and try it out at home. And that's been a really successful project and one that we're certainly looking to progress maybe in Newport. Next slide, please. So supporting all of these activities is our team of incredible volunteers. We work with over 100 people who give their time for free, and our volunteer manager works with each of them to provide support, guidance, and to find out what matters to them so that we're able to get the most out of their volunteering experience. Next slide, please. In addition to that, we have our education room. So the charity runs the education room at Waysavers head office, which is overlooking its recycling plant. It's recently been renovated and in its final testing stages, almost close to opening it. And once ready, it's going to take school children from across South Wales to teach them about the recycling process. So each of these stations, as you can see in these pictures, will teach children about the process that raw material has to go through to become a product. And then the process of recycling that item into a new product once it reaches its end of life. We've run an education room of sorts since 2006. And thousands of children pass through the room to learn about recycling. They particularly like it when they get to go out to the viewing platform, which overlooks the reprocessing plant. They'll put their ear defenders on and they get to see the cans and plastics being sorted. It's really noisy and it's really smelly. And they always remember that. And they use it to take all of that information home and then use Pest Power on their parents to encourage them to recycle more. So it's a real win-win situation there. And then next slide, please. The final project that we run in Newport and in Aberdare is the Library of Things, and this has opened relatively recently. This is in partnership with the Library of Things in Newport is in partnership with Maindy Unlimited, and the Library of Things, if you don't know what it is, it's a library but for things. So it's things like pressure washers and carpet cleaners and tents and things that you're only going to use once or twice a year. What's the point of buying something, keeping it in your garage for all that time when you can borrow it for a really small fee? So the Library of Things is the second in Newport, again, the first being in Remake, but this offers something to the east side of Newport, to that community. That's Waysavers Charitable Trust. If we can go on to the next slide, we need to look at what Waysavers Limited does. So Waysavers Limited is the trading arm of Waysavers Charitable Trust, and all the shares are held by the charity. So any profits made by the limited company are covenanted to the charity, so we can pay for Laura's wage to run an happy library or a volunteer coordinator. So what activities do we do in Waysavers Limited? Next slide, please. So this is the one that you're going to know us best for. We run the curbside recycling for Newport City Council. We've run recycling services for the city since the late 90s, when it was little more than a peripheral activity. Today we recycle from more than 74,000 households in Newport, and that's grown by 20,000 in the last 20 years, which is significant. It includes curbside box and bags collections, as well as collections from flats. And it's a weekly collection service that is operated in line with the Welsh Government's blueprint. Specifically, that means it's source segregated. So paper and card are collected separately from cans of plastics, which is collected separately from glass, which is collected separately from food. And this separation is conducted at the curbside. So no waste that can't be recycled is knowingly taken back to our depot. This not only ensures that we can recycle everything that we collect, but it also enables us to educate our residents. So if somebody puts out something that can't be recycled, we leave it. The resident then knows that that can't be recycled, and they won't put it out the following week. So that's kind of a critical element of what we do. So we operate 22 recycling trucks in Newport and collect from 15,000 properties every day, which is fairly significant. Next slide, please. So once collected, the material heads back to our recycling plant, which is on Esperanto Way underneath the Transporter Bridge. Here, the material is offloaded into various bays for bulking and baling ahead of onward transportation to reprocessors around the UK. And I think people often forget that we do all of that work as well as the collection. So that material is bulked and baled and sent out for reprocessing. The only material that's sorted on site is cans and plastics, which is the only material that we co-collect. And we have a small picking line with one person on it, plus a big overbound magnet, which takes out all the steel, and 2 eddy current separators, which positively charge the aluminium. So we've got a positive sort on alley, positive sort on steel, and what isn't aluminium, it's not steel, is plastic. And then that's obviously sent off for reprocessing. We also offer some baling and sorting for other local authorities who may have machine breakdowns, or they may not be able to process their material for some reason. So this is done before or after the Newport material is processed, so as not to interfere with that work. But we do offer that service out to other local authorities. Next slide, please. And finally, the service that we run is the final service that we run with Waysavers Limited is commercial recycling. So we've been running commercial recycling services to businesses in Newport, Monmouthshire and Cardiff for years, 30 years. However, recently there's been quite a significant change in a piece of Welsh legislation, which means that all businesses in Wales now have to source segregate their recycling as households do. And I'm sure many of you have seen the multicoloured bins that have popped up all on our streets, including our purple bins, but there are also others out there as a result. And this is so that businesses can separate their waste. So food waste in one bin, plastics in another, and cardboard in another. And as a local authority, Newport City Council have an obligation to offer this type of recycling service to businesses. And in April this year, we partnered with the council to deliver the service on their behalf. And as a result, we're now collecting material from an additional 600 businesses in Newport. Next slide, please. So, partnership. The recycling services offered by Waysavers come out of the partnership that we have with Newport City Council, and this has been in place for 30 odd years. It's beneficial to both parties. So without Newport Council, Waste Savers wouldn't be able to deliver on its core objectives to reduce the amount of material going to landfill and incineration, and to ensure it's being recycled correctly and locally. Newport Council has benefited from Waste Savers' position as a charity. So it's enabled us, we have enabled them to obtain funding for recycling activities and for purchase of capital assets. So for example, our recycling plant, which is owned by Waste Savers Charitable Trust. It also benefits from the added value that the charity provides through its additional waste reduction work, along with the collective experience of the group. However, all of this is still under Newport Council's control. So Newport Council has overall responsibility for the recycling service as a local authority, and you discharge this in a number of different ways. So in order to monitor our performance and keep control of what we do, we have a number of different meetings that take place on a regular basis. The first of that is the monthly performance monitoring meeting. Now that takes place at an officer level, a management level. We have that every month, and we talk about key performance indicators like litter and box returns and any health and safety issues. We also have a finance meeting every month where we talk about truck spend and how much we are spending on salaries and how much gloves cost. So we analyse that on a monthly basis. Then we've got quarterly board meetings and Newport City Council delegate meetings. And I know we've got a couple of councillors here who sit on that board, scrutinise what we do, and ask relevant questions. Our next meeting is actually in person, and I think a lot of the representatives are coming down to the site to actually see what we're doing. Then we've got auditing. So Newport Council audit us on a regular basis. So they come out on our trucks. I think we have at least 2 or 3 audits a week, making sure that we are abiding by the rules and regulations, making sure that the box returns are correct, making sure that our staff are wearing the correct PPE. And then we have the health and safety scrutiny, because obviously you have ultimate responsibility for health and safety of the service that we provide and the public. So again, we have health and safety audits which take place. Next slide, please. So all of this offers real value for money for the authority and for the taxpayer. As a deliverer of source segregated recycling, the integrity of the material we collect at the curbside is maintained. That means that we get really good money for it, we sell it. And last year we generated an income of £1.4 million as a result of the sale of recycled products. Now, we didn't put that in our pocket. I didn't give myself a massive pay rise. All of that went to offset the cost of the service. So it directly reduced the cost of the council and therefore the taxpayer. It's also worth adding that Waste Savers makes no profit from this service. We benefit in different ways from shared resources for the charity, but there is no profit made on this service. It's a cost neutral service. So this income generation, along with efficient service delivery, has resulted in Newport's curbside recycling service being the lowest in Wales. So if we can get to the next slide, I've got some data for you. So I find this slide quite interesting. It's been taken from the WLGA, which they've done a report on financial analysis of curbside recycling and waste collection. And I will pull out a few figures for you because we can get sort of hidden in all this text. So what we can see here is the average dry recycling collection cost for Wales comes in at £46 and a penny. Now Newport's cost is just £17.57 per household. The average dry recycling processing costs is about 88 pence per household. Newport's is below this at 57 pence. And the average expenditure on dry recycling as a whole is £55.38 per household. Newport's is £18.14. So it is the lowest in Wales. This is due in part to the income that we're generating from the sale of that material, which is why source segregated collection is so critical, so that we can sell that material to generate that £1.4 million to offset that cost of the service. Okay, if we can move on to the next slide, please. Strategic projects. So as a partnership, Newport City Council and Waste Savers have focused on a national target of 70% recycling since 2025. I'm just checking on the right slide here. Yes. While providing a good quality service to residents. We've rolled out a number of initiatives over the years to increase recycling and improve services to our residents. Most notable ones to date are comprehensive weekly source segregated collections. We started that back in 2004. Fortnightly collections of refuse. That was in 2006, and that was ahead of many other authorities. We were one of the first to go fortnightly with our refuse, and that was in an attempt to squeeze that material out of the bin. Then in 2010, we introduced weekly food waste collections. Now, I know a lot of authorities in England haven't even got a food waste collection now. We were doing this back in 2010. And then we've got the reuse shop, the HWRC. That was the first one in 2015. And then in 2019, we rolled out 120 litre bin. Most recently, the three critical strategic activities, projects that we've done have been blue recycling bag rollouts, 3 weekly refuse and commercial recycling. I want to tell you a bit about those if possible. So next slide, please. Blue recycling bag. Okay. So in 2023, we rolled out a new blue recycling bag to replace the blue recycling box that had been used. And I'm not sure that many people really understood why we were making that change. So I thought it was a good opportunity for us to talk about it. So we found that the distribution of material in recycling boxes had changed throughout the years. The volume of paper, which was previously in the blue box, had dropped. Who reads a daily paper anymore? We don't. The amount of paper out there just isn't there. But the volume of cardboard has increased. Everybody shops on Amazon. So therefore, we made a big decision to move cardboard from the green box to a new blue bag. This enabled us to increase the size of the container from a 55 litre box to a 90 litre bag, gave everybody a little bit more capacity. It also allowed us to keep the glass separate from the cardboard and reduce contamination. As no matter how hard we tried, we could not get all of the glass out of that cardboard when it was mixed together. And we were getting shards in that cardboard bale, which our reprocessors hate. So in order to get good value for that material, we needed to get the glass out. Plus, there was a cost saving in the containers. The curbside box now costs £5.19, and the quality of that box has been declining year on year. They split, they break, the handles come off. So we made the decision to move away from the curbside box and move over to a bag. So a box costs around £5.19, a bag costs £2.05. There's a significant saving there. We can move on to the next slide, please. So that additional capacity that we created for the cardboard also enabled the partnership to move forward with 3 weekly refuse. And that was in order to squeeze every ounce out of that waste bin, every ounce of recyclable material. And this slide here was produced by Rap Cymru on Newport's domestic waste, the waste that was left in the black bins. And it showed that 40% of the contents could easily be recycled at the curbside. So the move to 3 weekly collection wasn't one that was taken lightly, but it was essential for us to reach 70% recycling by 2025 and squeeze that material out of the bin and into the food waste boxes and the dry recycling containers. So to date, we've seen an increase in overall tonnages of 5.26% and an 11.3% increase in food waste. And we are monitoring this on a monthly basis to make sure that we are, that material is coming out of those boxes. So that we can reach that 70% recycling figure by the end of the year. Next slide, please. And finally, our biggest project to date has been the rollout of source segregated recycling services to businesses in Newport. And this property here, I think it's the Taste of Asia. I pass every morning on my way to work, so I've taken a photo of them, and you can see the recycling bins in situ. To date, we have 598 clients. I'm still working on August's data, so I should be able to insert that soon. And we're diverting over 80 tonnes of dry recycling and 50 tonnes of food waste a month. Our next step is going to be to push that out even further so we can increase that tonnage. Next slide, please. I find this slide really interesting, but I find waste really interesting. So this actually gives the curbside tonnages to date. Excuse me. It shows the impact that all of these strategic projects have had on the diversion rate. So you can see back in 1999, we introduced, fortnightly collections of recycling. Then that changed to weekly collections of recycling, which increased it further. You can see what happened when we added food waste. You can see what happened when we added cardboard to the collection, and then the 120 litre bin rollout. The only blip in this is highlighted in red, and that's COVID. So when COVID hit, everybody stayed at home. Nobody went out to any pubs. Everyone started drinking at home and cooking for themselves and ordering packages off Amazon. So our cardboard went through the roof and our food waste went through the roof. Understandably, it's dropped back since everybody went back out into the community. But you can see, you know, the effect that has had. And the figure right at the end is the introduction of 3 weekly collections, and we are monitoring this closely, and we hope to have that you know, up to 70% by the end of the financial year. On to the next slide, please. Another data slide for you. So that's tonnages. This is recycling rates, and you can see how the recycling rate has again changed through time. So we're now up to 67.89%. We need to get to 70% by the end of March. Next slide, please. So what's next? Well, we've got to get to 70% by 2025. That's our main focus. And after that, zero waste by 2050. But there are going to be a number of Welsh Government initiatives that will happen over the next few years that we just need to consider and understand how they're going to affect us. So the first is a deposit return scheme. That's something that Welsh Government are pushing. How's it going to affect us? What does that look like? What's going to be expected of us at the curbside? Are we going to have new equipment in the yard? We don't know. We don't know how any of that will work. So it's too early to say at this stage, but we know that it will affect us. We just need to work out how it's going to affect us. Then there's the electrification of the plant with the aim to get the fleet electric by 2030, which is only 6 years away. We currently have 2 electric vehicles, and we've just completed installation of solar panels all over our roofs. So we've got, you know, got significant solar capacity there. But 6 years, each of those trucks costs quite a bit of money. So we need to focus on that. Then we got the tip shop redevelopment. If anybody's been down to Docksway recently, you'll see that the tip shop is past its prime. Let's be polite. And we've been awarded money from the Levelling Up Fund. So our plan is to renovate that site in the next few months to get that looking better than it currently does, with a canopy and, you know, more facilities down there. So again, time and attention will be given to that redevelopment. And lastly, Newport's a growing city. At present, we just have 1 HWRC. Do we need to consider a second? If so, where's it going to go? How's it going to be run? Will it help us to get to zero waste by 2050? These are all the things that we need to consider as a partnership across the city. Next slide, please. And that's it. So that is a real whistle-stop tour of Waste Savers as a whole. We've covered the charity and the limited company, and I open up to questions.
Thanks, Penny. I've got a really thorough explanation of what Waste Savers does. I mean, about a year ago, I was lucky enough to be given a guided tour of the facility, and that presentation just reminded me of a lot of things I learned on that day as well. And you know, things like the 3 weekly collection and the change on boxes, the bins, you know, as you explained, they're not done on a whim, this, the rationale behind it all. So yeah, thank you very much for that. I'll open up the questions. So, Councillor Hughes, do you want to kick us off?
It's the same, I think. So you showed me around, it's a long time ago now, it's 7 years ago now. So we're glad to see, you know, the partnership still going strong. And it's actually, I think, one of the partnerships that I think got a lot of respect for people. I think either certain council. I think what's impressed me as well is how visionary you held as an agency, and some of the really nice things that people think, oh, this is really great ideas, and I think it's a lot of really great ideas there just across the board. Quite well. So my business is based up there, so it's really useful. And I think part of that as well for me is about it makes people think about their recycling. You know, so you don't have to throw things away. You think about reusing. I think lots just great ideas all the way across. I think you know, I think the one thing that we were talking about as councillors, I think, is some of the reputational stuff. Since you know, it's sometimes slightly attached. I think some of the issues that come from the curbside recycling. You want it's about how that, especially sort of the different concepts in areas, how that. So I've been thinking about some of how that can be improved. I know your ideas are really well, but that's the only part I think anywhere that I hear negatives about this, how it will cloud a lot of the great work you do. The only other thing I'd ask really is, and I'm not aware, maybe you'll be aware, but some of the discussions we're having really around, we can get away from the fact that we've got lots and lots of people using vapes, you know, hour and hour. Literally hundreds of them, you know. I think if there's any way we can get around it, trying to find great ways of maybe introducing that into the curbside pickup, people at home, that, because, you know, the same way that I'll take my waste pouches down to Sainsbury's. Is there any way we can start thinking about how we take that problem away from make it a natural thing for people to, until we actually ban them altogether, maybe, you know, think about how that we can incorporate that. It's great if we can think of that. If you're also the ideas, and the great ideas, so I'm sure you're not to be creative, but I think overall, great partnership, and we're very proud of it. Great. And great presentation.
And in terms of the vapes, I mean, it's a complex problem.
Yeah.
Right now, there's not even proper outlets for recycling, so we are miles away from considering how to collect them because there's nowhere to take them. But that's something that's been, I mean, all waste officers, you know, across, well, I don't know, England, but certainly waste, that there's been conversations around this, there's been meetings, there's awareness that this is a problem, and, you know, we're looking for solutions. So this is very much, you know, in the agenda. So
great.
Thanks. Councillor Hussain online, and then Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. That was, I'd like to say first, that was a very in-depth presentation. Thank you for that. My concern is, I'm specifically just talking about issues that, you know, come up in front of me as a councillor, and I'd like to see what feedback or what you know, Waste Savers is doing as an organisation to combat those issues. So firstly, for example, when we get people, you know, from other countries relocating to the UK, the recycling and all the system that is here, it's something completely new to them. I'd like to know what kind of community engagement or work do you actually offer, or any kind of feedback do you offer for people who've recently come to the country? Is there anything that you actually do about, you know, to teach them about recycling and to offer, you know, some sort of comprehensive, some sort of a device or anything?
So on that one, and obviously Newport is quite a multicultural place with people coming from all over, much more so than perhaps other parts in Wales. And we know certain areas of the city see these quite prominently in the past, and I think that was quite successful. We have some of our officers, well, your leaflets are multilingual, so information is provided in different languages, not just English and Welsh. So those that are more prevalent are included as part of the recycling leaflets that Waste Savers have, and it's available. In the past, some of the council officers used like some pictorials really to try and explain to people that, you know, don't have a good command of English or directly don't speak the language, to try and engage with them and give them a visual representation of how they have to present the waste, because as you will be aware, some of the issues we have sometimes with incorrect management of waste comes from lack of knowledge. So what I'd say is these communities need a targeted approach. And if we know, you know, specific areas that are having problems right now, we'd be more than happy through waste engagement and enforcement team to do a specific engagement with them, or perhaps organise some tailored events from time to time to try and raise awareness with the community, perhaps contact with some community leaders who may be aware of families moving and new to the area, etc. So we'd be happy to explore that with you.
Okay, I should have actually mentioned in the beginning, I didn't know there was going to be any mention of Maindy Unlimited. I'm actually a board member and a trustee, so I don't know if that's a declaration of interest.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Councillor.
there
We'll
is
make a note of
actually.
that anyway.
Yeah, there is actually something in the pipeline with Maindy Unlimited. We've recently had a meeting with Saran, and we're thinking of, you know, setting something up. And I think we were going to involve Waste Savers as well. I don't know if anyone's been contacted yet, but I think something, you know, along the lines that we were intending, that's something really positive, and it's also an opportunity to teach and to, you know, spread the information to residents about recycling, about, you know, fly tipping and all the other things, because it all goes hand in hand. It's not just about recycling, it's also fly tipping and, you know, just dumping rubbish everywhere. So that's one of the other things. Another thing I wanted to ask, I know that there's lots of new things that you're doing, and obviously new things are coming up all the time. Have you actually looked at any kind of examples from, or any kind of inspirations from other cities, or, you know, internationally, of things that you can adopt as well, or any kind of initiatives that you could maybe do, you know, in Wales or in Newport specifically?
Yeah, absolutely. We're constantly on the lookout for inspiration. The concept of the tip shops, which we've now got 9 across Wales, was originally born out of the visit that we made back maybe 15 years ago to Oregon, where they have series of thrift shops out there based on this sort of concept. So we have used that as an example. There's also some really good examples of work in Bristol at the moment. They've got an old department store. I can't for the life of me remember what it's called, but they've got an old department store, the old Debenhams there, and they've separated that out to be run by lots of little individual community groups. And it would be, you know, wonderful if we could do something like that here. We're constantly on the lookout for you know, learning, inspiration. I know that my charity manager actually sits on a group with Welsh Government, and he gives them lots of advice on how things could be improved in other local authority areas, and, you know, we use as an example of best practice quite a bit. We are talking to them about the Nappy Library and how that can help as well. So yes, there's lots of examples out there that we can learn from, and also lots of people can learn from what we are doing in Newport.
And from a local,
Go
from a
on.
local perspective, I only wanted to add that there's, you know, a network of all officers in Wales. We meet regularly to exchange experiences. There's a separate network for the South Wales that is quite active, and actually, you know, the chair of that group is always looking for speakers, people from other councils across different regions of the UK, companies that suddenly come up with proposals for recycling new materials or recycling them in a different way. So we're always trying to, you know, be up to date with what the market can offer, what the industry can offer, what things can be done differently. So certainly, yes.
That was just one other thing. I've had you know, many concerns from residents about when there's mixed recycling. I know, you know, when there's mixed recycling, they won't take it, even if it's just one item. The thing is, and there's also like elderly people, if they get somebody to do their recycling, somebody walking past their house, they'll just throw something in there, and then that means that the collection, they won't be taken, and they've got a sticker, and that sometimes that bag could, or that box could be outside the house for weeks on end, especially if it's full, and then we have to report it to be removed. Is there any other way, you know, what can we do to help these residents? With one, it's not their fault if somebody's walking past, and two, if they're elderly or disabled, they can always get out to sort out the recycling if something like that has happened, especially when, you know, it's first thing in the morning, their collection is, and someone's thrown something in overnight.
So we do have a team of engagement officers who often go out and talk to residents where there's a contaminated issue. Ian Sims is our head of operations. Do you want to give a bit more information on that?
Yeah, certainly. In terms of, yeah, these are frustrating. But back at the depot, we aren't geared up for separating all the materials out, as Penny alluded to earlier. we only have a small picking line that is designed for the plastics and the cans. So it's important. It's the guys on the front line won't know the reason why there's contamination.
Yeah,
They
that's
just
good
follow
too.
it. They just follow the procedure. But the good thing about the tag is there's an opportunity for communication. We will always go back and speak to the residents, and where there are issues of abilities or what have you, then we are sympathetic. So yeah, it's not perfect, but the main thing is that there's that dialogue and communication when it's brought to our attention.
Can I just follow up that up with? We had an incident recently where we had a member of the public who was quite irate that their box had been missed on a regular basis. They were in a terraced house in Riverside. They were frustrated because they weren't getting a collection, and we sent our engagement officers out to have a conversation with them. It turns out that they were putting things in their boxes that they couldn't recycle, but they had absolutely no idea that they couldn't recycle those items. So we spoke to them, gave them information about what should and shouldn't go in the box, and they were thankful that we had that engagement with them. So they were thankful that we were able to get out there and have that conversation. So we do use those types of things as a positive communication.
And it goes the same for the council officers, and they will happily visit someone and go through what we call being audits with them, which is actually opening things and taking them out one by one and pointing out what the item issues are with certain items, etc. The one problem that is more difficult to tackle, and I do 100% understand frustrations in people from your ward, for instance, is when contamination comes from the outside, because I know in terrace houses, a lot of people don't have enough space to keep the boxes inside. It's very easy to, walk along and get passers-by dropping certain items there. There's not an easy solution for that. And as I say, we're happy to engage with the specific areas where there may be more problems around that, or specific neighbours that see a repeat pattern, try and provide some advice to prevent that from happening, really, understanding the specific issues of the location.
Just one last thing. So, when you do actually leave these contaminated stickers on, does it actually have like any contact details where the resident can maybe phone in and ask why was it not taken? If they do, if for example there is a language barrier and they don't know how to why the reason that it was not taken, if they can get maybe some help from somebody to call anyway. Is there anything like that? And second one was these translated leaflets that you have, where can you get them from? Because I've never seen any.
Going back to the stickers, I'm talking from memory. I'm trying to visualize the sticker there. I'm 100% sure it includes website, email, and phone. And I do appreciate if someone has a language barrier, phoning is not going to be the best option. But our website at the moment, it's kind of built to self-serve, and you can report things online. There's an option for requesting assistance if you have issues with your recycling, etc. And if you want, I can give you those details directly, so you have them at hand, and you can circulate that among the community so they have them, because it's quite easy. The request will go to the team, and that will trigger, a contact back in the preferred method of contact.
Okay, thank you.
With regards to the leaflets, the leaflet that we've got at the moment is really image led. So we've tried to move away from words to images. And if you need a stock of those, I'm more than happy to make sure that you get those, and we can, target an area or work with you to get those out to the community.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you. Because I was thinking of maybe posting some in some of the areas where I know there's, a lot of issues with recycling, or maybe some people are not recycling, and I do try to do as much as I can. But yeah, no, that would be a great help. Thank you. That's it for me.
Thanks very much. I know Councillor Davis and Councillor Jones are waiting to speak, but I think Councillor Hughes wanted to come on a specific.
Yeah, it's just specifically on this one, really. I think it's just one of the issues we've got around that. Obviously, the stuff is left there with the sticker on. I think one of the issues that we've got as well is that we've got very few people with Alzheimer's dementia, so will have difficulties remembering They're living by themselves. They haven't quite got to the stage yet where they're talking about it openly. And they'll be doing mistakes for that. I think it'd be great if we could look at that as a separate issue. And it's quite new in the big picture, really. I think so. I wouldn't expect answers today, but it's just to have an awareness of that and see how we can maybe flag some properties that we're likely to have issues, especially with dementia. I think I've got aware of this myself with things that are going on. So it's just some families won't be living nearby, be able to reinforce that every week. So if they're living a long distance away, then they won't know about it until they go to visit. That could be a week or 2 weeks, 3 weeks into that journey. So it's just an awareness.
We can certainly work with you on that.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Marshall, was there something specific you wanted to raise?
Yeah, it's on relation to Councillor Hussein's point about the community, so it's kind of linked within that to go. It's just basically within the partnership, how does the partnership address the public misconceptions or resistance to recycling and waste management initiatives, particularly communities with historically low engagement? So I know obviously some of it was saying about the diverse communities, but there's also sometimes resistance about food or sometimes resistance about soft plastics. And it's just about, is there a particular demographic? What's the nature of the community in that side? And how can we better that and through the partnership, through the council, through elected members, through way savers?
I think that's a critical question, and that's something that we've been trying to address for years. What we've done as a partnership through the years is a balance of carrot and stick. So we have tried to encourage residents as much as possible. We have educated people. We've run education sessions. We've had outreach. There's been leaflets. We've done doorstep engagement. So we've done a lot of carrot, so encouragement. And then we get to a stage where we have to start stick. And the stick is the reducing the size of the refuse bin. So really squeezing that material out of the bin. So as an example, if we have a resident, and I know there are still quite a few out there who are food waste recycling refusers, what would they prefer? Would they prefer to put their food waste in a bin that's emptied every week? Or would they prefer to put their food waste in a bin that's emptied every 3 weeks? And that's just an example of, I don't want to say force, because it's more encouraging people to get that material into the right bin and have it recycled. So through the years,
changing behaviour.
Yeah, it's a balance of both of those things. It's the encouragement and also the changing the way that we run the refuse service to get the material out of that bin in the first place.
And if I can add, with the system we have in place right now, there's a ban on recyclable items and people cannot leave additional waste, and we have a tagging system for the bins. And people think, oh, that's because you're finding people. No, we don't go and issue fines indiscriminately. What that does is highlight the people who are having an issue managing the waste, and that enables us to identify them and concentrate on efforts, engaging with them and understanding the problems. And sometimes it's just a lack of knowledge, as people, Penny said, with these people living like riverfront. It's like people sometimes they're not aware about the services, despite our efforts to reach out to people. A lot of people, they don't engage with social media, they don't read their leaflets. Like, very difficult sometimes. So sometimes it gets to the point where it flags as an issue that enables us to take action. And I think at the moment our approach is concentrating on those people where the issues become apparent and try to target them, because with the other measures that we have in place, most of the population are finding it easy then to recycle more and better.
Yeah, I would say 98% of the people out there are recycling. They're recycling well. They're doing it right, and they're they're doing what they can do to get up to 70%.
Thank you. There's two parts to it. So, noticeable fly tipping in my area, in my ward. A lot of it is bags full of recyclable materials. So obviously that is obviously an issue which you probably come across all the time. The other one is about digital inclusion. So I know my colleague advised about those with dementia balances and others. Those with digital inclusion do have a number of different issues about accessibility to green bags and things like that there. So on the back of things, I know people have been asking for parents, for example, on the Facebook adverts and stuff that we've been doing about where you can pick up green bags. But like for the gear, for example, because I can only speak for my residents if Chair will permit on that side, you can pick them up in Mayfast Community Centre, you can pick them up in Tredegar Park, in the what do you call it, Tredegar House Library,
Yes.
and then obviously things. So there's nothing really in the gear, and I'm sure there's little gaps in between that maybe because we don't have a property that's manned all the time, obviously within the area. It's just ways and means that they would be able to go and collect with partnerships with local health board groups, or like we've got doctor surgeries or something like that there, to open that up to allow the community to hopefully become a bit more cohesive.
Right, yeah, I mean, traditionally, we food waste bags as a prime example, we got those out into libraries because we've got libraries across the city. But if there is another community area that you find that would benefit from having a stock of bags, I'm sure we'd be happy to get bags into those areas. We have to be careful. For example, with corner shops, a lot of corner shops won't want to stock them because they will compete with something that they're selling. But if we can find an area in the Gare, as an example, who would take a box of bags and make them available to residents, who more than happy to do that.
It's all about having that network with, trusted partners that, let's say, we also want to control misuse, we will see people using the bags for, the walking the dog and things like that. So, there has to be a balance, but we're more than happy. Actually, we've been talking about that recently, about how we can extend the network of places where people can collect bags from, because we don't want people trying to contact us to order bags. We want them to be able to go and get them.
Maybe the school or something.
So that's something we are considering. And certainly there are some points where schools do a good option. So definitely very much on the table. And thank you for flagging. Yeah.
Thanks. Councillor Jones, you've been really patient. And Councillor Davis, I haven't forgotten you. You're next.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Deal on operations. Yeah. So I've been looking at your strategy of your operations and such like that, and I've looked at some of the issues that residents have said across Newport. Obviously about litter, across when they put the waste out, and especially when we come to winter now, we notice an increase in curbside sort of litter, paper. So we've been looking at different options, maybe a different way of looking at doing things. Have you ever considered changing operations to come out at 10 o'clock in the morning start? So when I did, for instance, and I know a lot of other residents do it, we put our waste out in the morning because you start early. Because overnight in winter, the wind picks up and we have a lot of waste debris. So maybe if we moved it to a 10 o'clock to an 8 o'clock operation or such like that, I know there's cost implications, but for me, for instance, I can put waste out in the morning. There could be less waste on the roadside. So it's just an operational point of view. Have you ever examined that from a cost point of view or an efficient point of view?
Nothing to do with cost. There's always going to be a point in the day when you're going to come across busy times. So if we started at 10, then we're going to find ourselves collecting when people are going home, rush hour. People are trying to park their cars when they get home at night. So there's going to be increased congestion within the streets. So the reason why start time is mainly traditional. Sometimes people start work in the morning. Then, especially in the winter as well, you've got the late night, so you're out there late. So that would be the main issue we would have around there is congestion, where you're out collecting when people are trying to get home.
My comment to that would be, for my ward in Baysleg, you're running along on a Monday morning between 7 and 8 o'clock at peak traffic times. Then we have congestion issues there already.
Yeah. And
your trucks, 2 or 3 of them along there, believe it or not. You have quite, I think 2 definitely. But let's not get bogged down with traffic flow. I could argue the case, why and why not. But surely, looking from a point of view of waste management, which is a key part there for us. I know a lot of people put their waste out over the night before, and with winter coming, it's blown away. My bag, it's the back of my house sometimes with the wind coming from the west. And I know there's litter all down the lanes across the road. And I just think, even from cross-contamination, where somebody might put on a terraced house waste in overnight and go in and just contaminate your waste in Maindy or such, as fellow councillor suggested, it just seems to me a practical point of view, a 10 o'clock start, I would put my bin out the next morning. It will eliminate a lot of risk of waste going across roads and pathways and make Newport a cleaner, safer place and help us towards our agenda.
And if I can answer that, I would say our standard advice is always to please, if possible, put the bins out, the containers out in the morning. They do appreciate that. Obviously, we collect throughout the day. There has to be areas in Newport that first. And I understand that if the trucks are arriving to the first area, they're collecting from at 7:30 in the morning, probably is the earliest you get there. And sometimes earlier, say from 7, we tell people to give it out from that time. For a certain percentage of the population, it may be too early to be up and actually take it out. And I do understand that people would say, oh, I'll take it out at night. But they start from 7, they are collecting there up until like probably 2-ish or something like that. The vast majority will be done in a time frame that is quite reasonable for people to take in the morning. So my advice to everybody, especially around, the winter times when weather is worse, be mindful, because I think to an extent people take it out the previous night just to get it done. At the end of the day, I tidy up around the kitchen, this, that, whatever. I sort out all my waste and I put it out at night and I forget about it and have to think about it in the morning. I think a lot of issues would significantly reduce if people consistently did it the following day.
I agree with what your comments you say there, but I've spoken to many in my ward at least, and the comments I suggested there would gun what you just suggested. People do put it the night before. There is winter coming. It does get scattered everywhere. You start 7 o'clock in the morning collections. You finish by 2 to 3 o'clock. I just think all operation could be reviewed and manoeuvred around the people at Newport, because at the end
that does not prevent those people who are used to putting out the following night by keeping doing so. By us collecting later, people don't change the way they behave. We will not address the issue really.
Well, we're just asking the question: if people start at 10 o'clock and that's the first collection point, people will put their rubbish out in the morning.
Would they? My question is, do we really know they would do that?
They will have a collection, would they? So they would. It's an educational point of view, which we've all discussed. I, for one, would put my waste out in the morning, feeling more confident there'd be less waste on the curbside, roadside, and the people of Newport who we serve and try to do a business, a service for, I should say, sorry, not business, but a service for. I think my feedback and questioning, it is the litter after the collection is the biggest issue with waste savers. And I've just looked at a solution to try and give you a heads up on from an operational point of view, because you do start 7 o'clock, finish by 2, 3 o'clock. If you look across Europe, they do start later on waste collection because of this reason. I've looked into it.
It's not something that we considered. We've considered earlier collections, but we certainly haven't considered later collections. So if you can leave that with us to sort of consider and talk about in a little bit more detail.
I believe it's an option we should consider at this present time, because it will eliminate.
I do think we need to move on. We've gone back and forth quite a few times, so I think the point's been made. So have you got anything else you want to?
No, as he says, I think we see does a good job in Newport. Overall, I'm just looking at trying to give an option where we are.
Thanks for that.
Thanks very much. Councillor Davis. Sorry you had to wait so long.
That's okay, no problem. Thank you for the slideshow. Brilliant. Just a couple of questions I got. I know there used to be there was a problem at sometimes with regards to staff turnover, and I know a lot of problems I had with residents was on assisted lift, and it was because there was a high turnover of staff on the lorries that some might not know of some areas having their recycling taken for them. How is the staff turnover now? Is that improved?
Yeah, considerably. We're now a real living wage organisation, thanks to the partnership with Newport City Council. That has helped tremendously in terms of being competitive within the marketplace and therefore retention. Our main turnover now is from unwanted behaviour where we can't control and we have to leave people go. But no, retention is really good, and as a result, our reflection of KPIs. So yeah, for the last 18 months, I would say we've been doing really well in terms of retaining staff. and just leaving people go that are not meeting the standard.
I just add to that, that sometimes there are other reasons that may lead to an increase in some missed collections. For instance, if there's a period of change, and we've seen that recently in Newport with the routes changing because of 3 weekly, etc. That means changes for the crews, and even experienced one if they suddenly need to go to a different area because the truck is directed to go to a different street. Sometimes there's a learning curve that can lead to temporarily, some disruption to residents, for which we do apologize. But I think right now, normal circumstances, you have stable crews,
Yeah.
and the service provided in that regard is quite good.
I think the other things out of our control, regardless of the number of the staff retention, is we've got 70 people out there collecting for us on a daily basis. It's a large team, and there's 3 on a vehicle. And as a result of that large team, we have to offer quite a lot of holiday to fit it in throughout the working year. So at any one time, we can have 8 people on holiday. We manage the cribs, but the entire crew is not on holiday at the same time. But you get one sickness in there, and you end up with an entire crew that don't know the route, unfamiliar with the route, and that can cause a bit of issue as well. So there are dynamics that we manage on a daily basis, but yeah, we try to manage, and where we know there are areas of contention, we highlight them on the collection maps and speak to the crews, because we've got a better team of engagement officers now who can manage that as well.
That's brilliant. Good to hear that the turnover of staff is a lot better. How do they know in the vans where assisted lifts are needed? Do they have it on a list, or are they expected to remember?
Yeah, they have a list. So they have a paper list, which is given them on a daily basis, because it can change on a daily basis. And they're expected, to note where that assisted lift is. That's why familiarity is key for us on that truck, because the reality is it's a list. There's an address with a number, and they may not even know what street they're in, really. They just turned a corner, and they're in another street that they're collecting from. And so there are complexities with it, but I think we're managing it to an acceptable level currently.
That's lovely. Good to hear. But my other question was regarding the commercial waste now, like you said, started off in April. Have you come across any problems with it, or any businesses that don't particularly want to recycle, or with businesses having the problem that you do on curbside, where the wrong thing is put in the wrong bins?
Do you want to answer that?
Yeah, certainly, of course, yes, there's some contamination issues, but again, in partnership with the team at Newport City Council, that information, we take photographs, it's fed back to the team, and then the engagement officers go out to resolve the issue. We've had a few teething problems where there's a business address, but they actually present the bins on a different street. But so that things like that are taking time to iron out. But again, we're there now. I think the biggest challenge at the moment now is businesses. They panicked. They saw the legislation, so they just asked for a suite of bins. And after a few weeks in, they're realizing that they don't need those bins, that they're not producing that amount of waste that they thought that they would. So they're asking to change the size of the bin or the frequency of the collection. So again, Sylvia's team is working really hard in trying to accommodate those changes, give those changes to us so we can amend our routes. But yeah, I think we're there.
It's been, I have to say, a significant change for businesses. It's been a shock to the system, really, for a lot of them. And, bigger companies were better equipped to deal with the changes. For small businesses, it's been way more challenging. And obviously, we're obliged by legislation, same as them, but we've tried to provide as much information and support to business as possible. And it's been a hectic period for everybody. And other private waste collection companies that are out there will tell similar stories in terms of, everybody trying to deal with the changes best as possible. I think we've done well considering the challenge, and we are getting to a stable position. And I think the main issue, as Ian said right now, is businesses really trying to understand and adjust to the, because some of them never recycle. So for them, it was like an unknown how much I'm going to produce of plastic or waste of this or that, until they started doing it and seeing it, they didn't realize that there's been a lot of changes.
Okay, Sylvie, thank you very much for your answers. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Davis. Councillor Bright, did you have a? Yeah, do you have a-
Well, just echo everything else. It's really a good news story, isn't it? And we put Newport in recycling in Wales and UK and globally. It's fantastic stuff. And what particularly is pleasing is the nappy library. I mean, 20 years ago, I was chair of Gwent National Childbirth Trust, and just the initial outlay of purchasing those nappies was astronomical. Now it's a facility that you can go there and do that. It's an amazing facility. Question really. So you move from blue boxes to blue bags. So the next step, green bags. Sorry, we're going to get rid of the green boxes.
No, I think the intention is to keep the green boxes. So the green boxes have glass in them.
Yeah.
You put your green box out once a month now, but that'll have your glass bottles in and your small electrical items as well. So they wouldn't really work in a bag. So we would keep those in the box moving forward. We'd love to get rid of the boxes because they're expensive and they're not great. They do break quite easily. But I think in this case, because of the glass, we'd keep it.
I didn't want to be rude. I just showed you a photograph of my office. My office on Clean Road, and we got no outside storage facility. So in haste of the legislation, my staff ordered 3 big purple bins, which sat in my office for like 4 weeks. So just to go back and resonate what you said, totally agree. We all panicked.
Yeah.
But we were collecting every sort of thing. They did look funny.
I've got a couple of questions I'd like to ask myself. With permission of the chair. Yes, you can. Carry on. Sorry. One question is very quick about the peak scheme, because I work in children's care myself. I know you say you take referrals from the schools for children where mainstream education doesn't work well. Do you work at all with social services and with the care sector? Because a huge majority of the children I work with aren't in mainstream education, and this sort of thing would be perfect for them.
Yeah, we've worked with Mountain House is a name that sticks in my head. So we've worked with a number of children's homes and with a few social services departments, but predominantly it is with the schools. What I can do is ask Ian Pearce, who is our peak project coordinator, to just put out his feelers into different markets rather than just with the schools, to see if anybody else would be interested as well. Because I think it's an underutilised resource.
Yeah, I think the care sector would take, they would be a huge resource.
If you have any contacts, that would be really useful for me to pass along. We can sort of spread that message.
I can get back to you on that, definitely. My other question is to do with food recycling. I have to confess I'll confess the wrong words. Give credit to the cabinet member, because I asked a couple of questions to the cabinet member about this, and she's given me some really useful information. But I just like to hear from your perspective, really. The vast majority of the recycling that we do in Newport, we derive an income from, as you explained. With the food recycling, I think, if I understand it correctly, it gets sent to a processing plant in Aberdeen, and we pay a gate fee. So on the surface, it sounds like we pay to get that food recycled.
Yeah.
Could you just maybe explain a bit about what benefits Newport gains from that arrangement?
So obviously, I mean, we recycle because it's the right thing to do. We want to recapture, we want to prolong the life of the items, etc. Not all materials that get recycled have a value. Some things we need to pay for so that they get recycled. So the idea for us is to maximize the value of those items that have a market value, sell them. The other things, we need to recycle them because it's equally important. However, there are other benefits that come from it. In the case of food waste, we have a contract in place. It's kind of a partnership arrangement because it's waste from local authorities that go to a plant up in around the counter. It's called anaerobic digestion process, where the food gets decomposed. It generates a gas that it's turned into electricity,
Yeah.
and then it generates a bio kind of fuel that can be reused as well. So while it has a cost, because it's a process and we end up paying for the material to be recycled, it turns into an environmental benefit, and it provides a benefit in terms of additional electricity exported to the grid. So,
And it was cheaper than landfill, wasn't it? So-
and it was way cheaper than obviously sending the food to landfill. So
Yeah.
there is a saving by recycling that was way cheaper.
That's an option.
That makes sense.
Staying out of the air,
Yes.
being generated. Yeah.
I suppose my follow-on question from that then, is there any sort of feasibility of people having that sort of facility rather than having to send it to RCT, or is the set cost of that just prohibitive?
The cost is significant, and normally these are projects that are planned thinking about long term. So in ways at the moment, the favoured option from the Welsh government is create local hubs if possible. So you would have that facility where a number of neighbouring authorities, and we are relatively close, I guess, if when you get the whole of Wales and the time it takes to get there is from us. And then the idea is that we send the materials to as close to home as possible, and having a facility in Wales is hugely beneficial, because the alternative probably would be sending it somewhere in England. So
How long's the contract? This is project
it
work.
is a 15-year contract.
Right.
And I think the idea is that they build that facility for food waste there. Then there would be another region in Wales that where primarily another facility would be available for a different material where local authorities can send it, etc.
No, that makes perfect sense.
Okay.
Thanks. Has anybody else got any questions? I can't see any hands online. Councillor Marshall.
Thank you, Chair. I've narrowed down as much as I can. So the first one is just about the new changes of Welsh legislation and how it's affected the partnership and ability to pick up and utilise more fruitful recyclable material. Have you seen a change of that, and especially like things like takeaways changing their materials from single plastics, and looking at how they use materials, and the way that we have the materials coming home is changing? Have you noticed that a development in change?
Absolutely. Yeah, we really have. So a couple of examples I can think of is lightweighting glass. So I don't know if you've noticed, but wine bottles have got thinner. They have. Wine bottles have got thinner. So our glass tonnages have been fluctuating for a number of years, not because people aren't recycling as much glass,
Or
drinking any less. The width of the bottle has become thinner. So we are seeing a reduction maintenance of the current class levels because of that. We're also seeing some of those items switch from glass to plastic because they're lighter. So we are seeing our plastic tonnage go up. Another key material change over the last 5 years has been plastics. So if you went to the supermarket and bought a tray of sausages 5 years ago, they would have probably been in black plastic. So if you go to the supermarket now, you'll see no black plastic. They've got rid of that because when you send plastic to the plastic recycling plant, they use what's called an optical sorter. So they put light through the plastic and it then sends it into various different compartments depending on the grade of that plastic. But when it hits black, it classes that as waste and it will throw it and be disposed of as waste. So black plastic cannot be recycled because of this issue. So there's been a big shift in the manufacturing of packaging material to move away from black plastic into other
And the polythene stuff you get in takeaways.
Yeah.
Things like that.
so that's all changed. You want to see it's green or it's brown. That's great. That can be recycled then at the plant. You will also see if you bought let's have an example, hummus. If you go to a shop and you buy hummus, it used to come in a cardboard container and it had a plastic film on the top and it had a container, a lid on top of that. Well, a lot of that's been reduced because, again, the manufacturers are trying to reduce the amount of waste that they're producing. So we are seeing that at the curbside. Our materials are changing and we are changing the way that we collect them as a result. So another example of that is this decline of paper. If you go back 15 years, we'd be doing about 5,000 tonnes a year. 5,000 tonnes? About 500 tonne a month of paper. We collect practically none anymore. Because all of that shifts over to cardboard. And that's why we combined cardboard and paper together, because we collect such such small amounts of paper that we can combine it with cardboard and collect it together. But the amount of cardboard that we're seeing, because everybody's buying online now, everybody's buying from Amazon, has shot through the roof. So the vehicles that Ian bought 7 years ago for recycling, we're having to change the way that we're using those compartments. So we have a massive compartment of paper that we don't need anymore. We're having to put different materials in there as a result. So we are seeing direct results of changes in legislation, changes in people's habits directly at the curbside in our material. I find that absolutely fascinating.
Where's the fine coming? Is it because you're not, the talking about the companies that are producing material and producing the packaging, and then the end user. So, your business look at the end user, and so and then lots of stuff happening on the other side to stop those companies producing the wrong type of plastic.
Yeah, there's plastic recycling tax that came in. I don't know enough about it, but there was a tax that was brought in if you're producing or using that material within your business, you have to pay a certain amount of money. So there was the plastic recycling tax, which then changed the way that producers are using plastic packaging.
It's testament to the forwards and grocers and ideas, the way they've got supply, they've got to cut it straight out from the waste cycle.
Yeah.
They're looking at changing the way as well. There's a thing called a PRN, which I don't understand. And producer responsibility, they note. They're on about changing that, they're putting more onus on the people who produce the material in the first place. Because ultimately that ends up as recycling.
It's like you go to Lidl shop and these other shops now, where you just go as a kid at the local kibby shop in the council estates, you just give these boxes, put your groceries in the same way. You've seen that with Lidl now for their waste, they give you those boxes. Even Tesla's got boxes if you want to take them there.
We have seen a dramatic, almost disappear now, those, I'll say the containers that you'd have your chips on or something, that's.
Thank God, because they were a nightmare.
Yeah, they were a nightmare.
Yeah, I suppose it's TVs now, I would imagine just packaging for them, I suppose.
You get a lot of cardboard and stuff now,
Yes.
isn't it, for things and stuff, so yeah.
So if you look at Marks, again, I'm deviating here a little bit. If you look at Marks and Spencer's, they're changing the way that their containers, they're changing the containers. So whereas previously you'd go and buy a box of chicken fillets and they would come in a plastic container, it's now a cardboard container that's lined with plastic.
Okay.
And you then rip the plastic out to get rid of that. And you can recycle the cardboard. That's a real change.
So we just stick with Councillor Bart's questions for a minute, otherwise we're going to get it.
Sorry.
The other one linked with legislation is what additional strategies or legislative measures could be implemented to improve recycling rates and reduce waste further?
So I think there are a number of discussions going on with Welsh Government at the moment. The big one is the deposit return scheme. So that means that if you bought a cup from a shop, instead of throwing it away, you could return it to that shop and get 20 pence off, whatever. So they are they're doing some trials at the moment. They do some in Powys and some in North Wales. So that is a way of encouraging more recycling. It'll be interesting to see how that translates into what we do at the curbside and how that affects us. And we're not quite sure at the moment, so we're watching that closely. The other thing is plastic film recycling. So if you look at what's in your bin now, it's pretty much going to be cat litter and plastic film. So is there a way that we can recycle plastic film at the curbside? There are trials. I think there's a trial in Blaenau to collect plastic film. Again, I'm not quite sure how they're going to do it. Are you going to issue a single-use plastic bag to put your plastic film in? I don't know. Are they going to put it in a box? Is it going to blow all over the road? We don't know. But these are the sorts of things that are being discussed at a higher level, and that if they decide to move ahead with will affect us. But obviously we'll have to consider the impact on things like litter and our residents and how all that's going to work before we move ahead with any of that.
Yeah, the other big thing that Welsh Government is pushing is leaves.
Yes.
So with the tip shops that we've got, the shopping mainly, the Welsh Government are really keen for councils to expand that sort of provision, so that it prevents it becoming waste in the first place.
But what I would say to that is I think we're quite forward thinking. You know, we've got a remake who does an incredible job. We've got zero waste down in Tredegar House. We've got lots of examples of reuse activities. We've got a nappy library, we've got a tip shop. So we are doing a lot of things already. Other local authorities aren't necessarily doing that. We can do more, we can do, you know, we can improve what we're doing, but we are doing a lot already.
We need more influencers doing stuff like that rather than the new top they've just bought in, whatever, actually showcasing some of this stuff and a new way of greening influencer. If you
Yeah, I know there's some activities going on with Mainly Unlimited as well, with their activities there, upcycling and clothes swaps, that kind of thing. So it is happening. There's some great groups out there doing some fab work.
With that, obviously with the kind of, I say fruit, but with the monetary value you get for more than materials and things like that there, with these changes and moving forward and things like that there, it links in just about the financial side and just to make sure that there is financial stability moving forward and about being able to adapt quickly, effectively because of things like COVID and surge of various things. And is there anything else there about just basically as well to ensure that public funds that are used efficiently and effectively, and looking at potential, you know, downturns in the economy, which obviously has a downturn and how much councils have locally. So therefore, there might be more reliancy on, you know what I mean, on like the commercial side to make sure that you meet cost balance.
Yeah, I think each of the projects, so the charity runs separately to the limited company, and anything that is made on the commercial recycling service, any profit that's made goes back into the charity to support its activities. Waste Savers, the curbside scheme is cost neutral. So we work really closely with the council to make sure that our costs are low, we're as efficient as possible, but also we're getting the best value that we can for the material that we sell. However, we are subject to markets. So Ian, sorry about this bad news, but Ian tells me this week that the plastics prices are dropping. So that will directly affect the income that we get to offset the service. But everybody suffers from this. All organisations out there running recycling services are, we're slaves to the market. So when it's riding high, we make sure that we make money and we benefit from that. And when the prices drop low, as they have done in previous years, unfortunately, we have to cover that bill. We have to put that bill.
And I have to say, because at the end of the day, you know, this is a statutory service that the council provides. Obviously, we need to cover the cost of the service, same as any other council service. And you will very well know that, you know, financing those services is an issue, and we have a lot of pressures, and they're not going to go away. You probably, you know, get worse with time. So this is one of the other services that obviously we need to keep reviewing to ensure that we are as efficient and low cost as possible. And I think, you know, the graph that Penny showed earlier clearly shows that at least on the waste element, we are doing really well in terms of keeping those costs as low as possible. And at the same time, I think providing a good service. And that's not going to change, obviously. That's going to be really a priority.
I think it was a note there for if you're around. There's a few things like I think it's Whisper, the cat food. There's Walker's Crisps. There was Pringles until they start changing to the metal bottom to the cardboard. But special recycling things as part of that responsibility, they pay for them to be received. And I know some of the stuff is now recycled in the large supermarkets and things like that there. There is other schemes such as like the McDonald's, I think it's Little Lotto or stuff like that. You can get various bits and pieces as well, and you can win prizes and stuff for showing that you're things on that side. Just wondering, is there any recyclable versions of that and or ways that we can do more carrot and stick, not necessarily maybe from a public service or public sector side of things, but is there ways that we can be working with other groups that do have that kind of community or commercial responsibilities in ethically to try and promote the green living moving forward?
I'm sure there are. I'd need to think about that in more detail and do a bit of research on that, but I'm sure there are more ways we can work with private sector businesses to encourage recycling.
I'm just thinking, you know, if it's ways that we can do carrot and stick locally for other projects, it's greening for them. So they'd be like, I don't know, I'm just kind of, you know, when I was younger, a free cinema ticket, oh yeah, that's amazing. You know, we go around and pick up a bag full of rubbish for the cinema ticket. But just stuff like that, there's a ways and means of, you know, that thing. And of course they can say, look, we're being green, we're doing all this type of thing. So there's bits and pieces locally. It doesn't necessarily potentially have to be nationally, it can be locally and regionally to do that as well. It's just a suggestion.
We have run schemes, sort of competition schemes in the past. We haven't revisited. We can revisit that.
No, and we do things with the schools. Like for instance, we have a battery recycling competition every year where schools compete to see which school gets the highest number of batteries collected and recycled. We did run the Christmas cards recycling competition, so things like that with the schools we keep doing. Yes.
Yeah, I think,
Oh, I think that's some Christmas card.
Yeah.
I think schools are a really good option for us
Yeah.
to work with. Yeah, it's worth thinking about that. And doing these.
The phones and things like that there as well.
Yes. Yeah, mobile phone.
Thanks, Councillor Marshall. Councillor Jones, did you have your hand up? I'm not quite sure.
No, I will ask a question. I do Ocean Cranberry, like a Tetra Pak with a plastic cap on top. It says 100% recyclable, and yet on collection, you guys, so your workers don't like it because I put it in the cardboard or I put it into plastic, and they said it doesn't go in there either. So I just wondered if you just clarify that for me.
Yeah, certainly. That's not true. It should be going in with the plastic. We promote that. It's all in our literature. It's been a recent switch. It used to go in the cardboard. The cardboard reprocessors didn't want them because it's a multi-layer.
Yeah.
It's got aluminium foil. It's got plastic. It's got cardboard. But recently, it's moved into the plastics because I have a picking line, and that's where the plastics go, and I'm able to pick that out. Because potentially it looks like Welsh Government are going to be going down the route of collecting these cartons and processing them separately. Currently, it's in with the mix with the plastic. What I will say on different materials, though, is that there's legislation out there called TEEP, and it has to be technically, environmentally.
And I can't remember.
I can't remember the other acronym, but is it going to be environmentally
Feasible, yes.
and economically
It has to be
achievable? So stuff like there are certain items out there that you just can't, as Sylvia said, you just can't make it. You can't justify the ends to the means. You use more energy, more resource than what you're trying to save. So you're banging up more carbon than what putting that back in the ground or incinerating would be. So there are balances in terms of recycling and what it is you can collect, process, and sell on, because it's really important that we do get an income.
There's just confusion over it because it was in cardboard. Then I was told by one of your chaps that now belongs in plastic. Or
Yes, it needs to go to
so
plastic.
it's educational wise, and then somebody else on your workforce didn't understand that sort of change in process. So where we need educating, sometimes I know you train your try as well, and they did give you good information as well, but maybe one or two was just picked up on again.
Yeah, maybe something for
A credit card.
curbside matters.
It's just observation.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Hughes, did you want to speak?
No, absolutely fine.
I'm not sure whether you were signaling or not.
No.
Councillor Marshall.
It's more the fact that we spoke about schools, so it's just a suggestion whether or not we can link with the governing bodies to have a link governor that looks at eco issues, because I don't think a lot of schools actually does that at all. But it'd be good to have educated governors to look at that responsibility and ethical stuff like that there to showcase. And then, as we said, these abilities to partnership would sink in. It's just a potential suggestion and to move forward. Maybe
Yeah, absolutely. Schools have traditionally been very difficult to communicate with. We usually get good communication with a school.
if there's someone keen. about
Yeah,
it.
if somebody's interested, so it might be an eco committee, it might be the caretaker, it might be a head teacher, it might be a teacher that's got an interest in recycling. But if there was a governor or some person that was interested at all of those schools, that would make our lives a lot easier. That would be great to communicate, certainly from a recycling point of view and reuse as well.
Right, thanks very much. I can't see anybody else indicating to speak. So can I just thank Ian, Penny and Sylvia for for such a good presentation and also for answering so many questions. We really appreciate your time. And as I said right at the beginning as well, I mean, the public perception sometimes of why things are done and, the changes to pre-weeklies and the changes to the bags and the boxes and so on. Having those explanations and the rationale behind it makes such a difference. So thank you very much. Just before you go, just want to make sure you agree with, we're going to just collate the points that's been made. So, Neil.
Thanks, Chair. Well, thanks for Hussein's comments about possibility to have engagement on tailored events with community leaders. Councillor Hussein's query about communication. About the leaflets, to see if anything give the leaflets to councillors. Councillor Hughes' comment about residents with Alzheimer's and dementia, asking if we could have more awareness to see how certain properties can be flagged. Councillor Marshall's query about the collection of green bags. Was there anywhere else we can target, such as GP surgery, schools, to collect them? And Councillor Marshall's comment about the liquor lot. Was there anything that we can do, similar to promote? Councillor Jones' comment about possibly have more information to be sent out about the Tetra Pak collection, further education about it. And Councillor Marshall's recent comment about the school governors. Apart from that, was there any other comments or recommendations the committee would like to make? And if you would like to see this as an annual report, is there anything in the report itself that you'd like to see to be added?
I'll open the floor to that. If anyone's got any suggestions about any extra information you'd like
I think
in
next time,
future reports?
we could. It was the report was great, but I think this is all driving to actually push people down towards recycling more, isn't it? So it's maybe some focus next time on how the work that we're doing maybe is changing people's behaviour. And so, and they're recycling less, so you're picking up less plastic, so you're picking up just that sort of link. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
If I just add a comment on it, what I think works well across all your audience, basically, is the use of images. When you see a small bag of waste and a big bag of waste, it's 1,000 words compared to what you put on paper. In what people read, they see the image, they go straight in. More, say 10 times more than they read. So I think the images are very important when you show scalability.
Right, thanks very much. Again, thanks very much for your time.
Thank you very much. Good evening.
Sorry.
Thanks very much. Right, just moving on to item 5 on the agenda, then we've got the scrutiny of item. So I'm going to hand over to Neil for this one.
Just to update the committee with the information that we requested from the previous meeting, the head of prevention and inclusion sent out the report about the findings in the homelessness section and needs. So we sent that out the other day. Also, Caroline is currently going to have a word with Jan about organising an all-member presentation about early intervention with children, adults and housing. So as soon as we get some information on that, we can update the committee. With the outcomes, we've sent committee feedback through the Newport Live Partnership. They've taken on the views of the committee. Currently waiting on the second one. About what information we'd like to see in future reports. Caroline advised that next year, what the committee requested will be shown in that report. The next 2 meetings would be on the 9th of October, where we're discussing the SRS update and Safe for Newport update, and also the Gwent Regional Partnership Board annual report. Also, Councillor Marshall, I've asked the head of housing about possibly adding the Royal Foundation Homework Programme onto the forward work programme. As soon as I get a response from him, I'll let the committee know. That's everything on my end here.
That's brilliant, thanks. And then the last item on the agenda is the minutes of the previous meeting. Just to confirm those. So is anything on that there, Neil? That's anybody got any questions or amendments to those minutes? Everyone happy to accept those? I'll take the silence to mean everyone's happy with that. Okay, that's brilliant. I'll declare the meeting closed. Thank you very much for your time.